OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Very good morning to you this Monday morning. It is myself and Eoin with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. We'd love to hear from you this morning. 0879 180 180. We're going to give you an opportunity to win a Gillette starter pack if you can give us some suggestions that should have made our performance rankings. And we've flipped things. We're going to start with our performance rankings this morning in just a minute. Before we get into that, though, the news this morning, if you've missed it, if you went to bed early, is that we have Rory McIlroy back in the winner's enclosure. There's obviously something holy about Quail Hollow that Rory McIlroy feels is symbiotic. There's some simpatico thing that goes on in Charlotte, in North Carolina, that Rory McIlroy has this power there that he doesn't seem to have in other places. Or that maybe that's wrong. It's actually, it's better than that. It's more important. It's restorative. He's been there twice after crapping out at Augusta and won. This is the second time. This is the third time that he's won there, and he says this is the only place he's won 3 times. And he did it by having a hook on the last hole where he had to have a penalty drop. Luckily enough, he had a 2-stroke lead going into the last. So it's not like it was seamless at the end. But Owen, you made the point pre-show that he was talking about the importance of the crowd being there. And it's true, when you go onto the PGA Tour website and look at the last, when the short putt goes in, there's a throaty roar from the gallery that he says he feeds off on. Maybe this is a placebo effect. I don't know. I mean, it certainly seems to be real. But what if everything we've watched for the last 18 months is not real? Well,
yeah, I think it's more confirmation bias than anything else, that he's probably playing really well. And he's like, the fans are really helping me out here. And when he wins the whole thing, it's like, yeah, the fans definitely contributed to it. Like, could it be the fact that you've got a new swing coach? Now, in fairness, his driving wasn't amazing yesterday. People said that it was actually his putting that won this tournament for him, and maybe he hasn't made a whole pile of changes on that part of his game. But I would say that there were more factors at play for Rory McIlroy than the crowd. I'm sure it helps a little bit.
But what if it's not? What if he's right? What if, like...
Maybe I haven't subscribed to this whole lack of crowd thing whatsoever. Maybe at Anfield there's a bit of truth to it because they've actually tapped into it so obviously over the last few years. But I think it's actually kind of a boring sort of factor that's been brought up. In general, across sport, like
I don't know. I mean, there's suddenly if he gets turbocharged now and goes, so the PGA Tour is the week after next, right? So major, it's at Kiawah Island where he's won before. Like, are we now in surge territory for Rory McIlroy? We might be. From the bit where it was like, this is a career that is hurtling towards irrelevance to, I'm back, baby, and all of a sudden because the crowds are back.
Yeah, his odds halved from 20-1 to 10-1. For the PGA Championship.
Bear in mind, pre-pandemic, he was the best golfer in the world. Like, up to the bit where golf stopped.
Yeah.
His form was absolutely sensational, and you were thinking, oh, this is the year. This is where he's going to finally get the green jacket. And then pandemic happens, fans disappear, he has a baby, he's like, this is all rubbish. And then the crowds are back, and he's like, give it to me.
But what about, say, before the pandemic, the meltdown at Portrush, for example? Like, what was that down to? People could say that was because of the crowd. That was because of the pressure that was on him.
And then he had that comeback where he nearly made the cut by 1 stroke, you know?
I know, but like, which is the truth here? Is it did the crowds contribute to the meltdown, or did the crowds contribute to him coming back at the weekend? Maybe it's just a situation where he really reads into the energy of the crowd, and maybe there was a nervous energy that time in Portrush, and maybe there was a really positive energy because he was playing good golf the weekend. So maybe that's the truth. But what we did see yesterday was Rory McIlroy, who should ordinarily be on the 18th tee in a heart attack free sort of situation. Yes, there was a body of water to the left, but there was a pretty simple tee shot, which was don't go anywhere near the left. And once the ball left the face of his club, the commentary team were just like, oh no, oh Rory. And it's like, oh my God, what is just happening here? You don't want to see it happen to the guy, but you're like, this is going to be a pretty epic few minutes while they try and find out where his ball is, because they actually have to cut away from him for a while because they just don't know if his ball is actually in the water. Thankfully for him, it wasn't. And thankfully for him, he's got a caddy who's been slammed quite a bit, I think, over the last few months, but actually really pulled it out of the fire for him last night, and Harry Diamond, who advised him to take the drop shot because he had a terrible lie and there was every chance he was just not going to make a sweet connection with that ball. It was going to put him into a worse spot, and then that iron approach would have been a nightmare attempt from his perspective. But in fact, he took the drop shot, got a lovely lie, and that iron, as we saw last night, was essentially the shot that won him the tournament, and happy days. But he was close to not taking that drop shot, and and who knows what might have happened. So a lot of really positive things going on with Rory McIlroy last night.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit more on the show as well. We'd love to hear from you, as I said this morning. 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is time for the Gillette Performance Rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Right, where do we start?
We start with the bad. It's the bad, the good, the grand. Every Monday morning here. So a couple of the bads, the advantage rule and the Lakers, which we'll get to in a moment. We're not going to mention Clare here for the time being, even though they could most definitely be there. We're not going to mention Mike Brown here, even though he stood on somebody's head. We're not going to mention Bryson DeChambeau here, even though he flew home after thinking he missed the cut, but actually made the cut, so had to get his private jet back from Texas again. And yeah, and we're not going to mention Big Sam here. Sorry, we're going to get to that a little bit later on in the show. They're probably the honourable mentions when it comes to the bad, but we're going to start here with the advantage rule. Jared, this is something that's annoyed you, that this has really grinded your gears over the course of the weekend, watching Dublin versus Kilkenny and those beautiful cats not being able to play silky hurling without the bloody whistle of the referee going.
I thought the advantage rule worked relatively well in GAA. You felt sometimes they didn't let it develop enough, and they would be like, oh, you had your chance there. You know, it seemed like it was over in a split second. But now the saying has become, the advantage is the free. And you're like, that kind of misses the point of the advantage rule. So Kilkenny, man comes down with the ball, man gets fouled, lays it off, gets thrown over the bar straight away. Referee calls it back. The free, which is a relatively straightforward free, gets missed. Suddenly you're introducing an element of chance to what was already guaranteed, whereas they could have just put the flag up and moved on. We all would have got on with our lives. Instead it's stop, start, stop. Oh, take that 35 seconds over the free, have the routine, check the grass, lick your, check them. And then all of a sudden it's like, there's a minute of our lives that we really could have been watching them play hurling. So I know this came up in the call that they did last week with the media, saying that actually, I know you're all talking about the sin bin and the cynical fouling and all that kind of stuff, but keep an eye on the advantage rule this weekend. That might be something that we all end up talking about. And lo and behold, people are talking about it, because I just think that in big games this year, there's going to be a goal-scoring opportunity denied somebody because the referee blows for a free. That, the free is not the advantage. I don't know if this is some kind of weird reaction to rugby. It's like, or whatever. I don't know. I don't understand why this particular rule needed to be changed, but maybe somebody out there can enlighten us.
The one thing we didn't need to see more of in hurling was good free taking. The free takers already have enough of the limelight. And yes, if the advantage rule would actually benefit the attacking team more by awarding the free, that's great, but it doesn't. It takes away goal scoring opportunities quite often. But we have enough of seeing TJ Reid scoring 112. We don't need to see him scoring 114 in a game.
An actual score got chalked off at the weekend. Like it was over the bar, the umpire had his flag waved, ready to go, and we were all happy with our lives, but it got chalked off and then the free got missed, and you're like, what happens if that happened in an All-Ireland final?
Yeah, the other thing about the advantage rule is that what actually constitutes an advantage, it would generally be like scoring positions. So I wonder if actually in modern hurling, if you've got outside your full back line, you're actually in a scoring position, and every advantage from there on out is actually a case of advantage for the scorer. But we're going to have Neil McManus with us a little bit later on once we get into the good of the performance rankings. Like, he scored from 100 yards yesterday, which had also about 20 metres to spare on the other side of the goalpost when it went over. People are scoring from everywhere. We've seen little tactical shifts here and there. Like, the certain trends that have come up in hurling over the past couple of years, they haven't seemed to slow down at all over the winter whatsoever. Maybe people have been in the gym quite a bit. Everybody's bulked up a bit. Everybody looked in pretty good shape, to be honest, over the course of the week. There was no sort of early league sluggishness on a physical level. There might have been when it came to actual the sharpness of the skills and all that, but the one trend was certainly those big booming scores that we've got used to over the past couple of years. They've gone nowhere. But then on the other side of the coin, you have a team like Cork who had their eye in when it came to goal, and it looked like Waterford might have actually pulled it back to some sort of epic comeback at the end, and then all of a sudden Cork ended up winning the game by like 4 goals, which is just this late flurry of ruthlessness in front of goal, where instead of taking their points to kill off the game, they're like, no, we're going for the throat here. So it's interesting. It's like we're going to see a lot of 100-metre points, I reckon, this year, but then we might also see a little bit of a shift when it comes to the goal-scoring attitudes of a team like Cork.
Yeah, look, it's impossible to know if that makes it easier or harder for teams to close the gap on the teams who are supposed to be superior to them. If you have players who can score from that distance, do we start seeing a lot of Hail Mary shots? I don't know. Look, I think it was a relatively bloodless opening weekend in terms of hurling, with the exception of what happened in Belfast. So more analysis coming on that a little bit later.
Yeah, let's move on to the Grand. So in the orange this week, we have Manchester United. Obviously, it's like, I think it's been a pretty good few weeks for Manchester United. The title race was never going to go their favour. The one trophy that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was going to focus on was going to be the Europa League. Like, the kind of contradiction is that the Europa League has been a great incentive for teams to win in order to qualify for the Champions League. I would say that that's actually more important for many teams than the trophy itself. It certainly would have been from Arsenal's perspective, for example, and maybe even Tottenham's perspective had they gone a little bit further into the competition. Whereas Manchester United, they're obviously going to be guaranteed Champions League football next season, regardless of what happens in this final. But yet you feel that Solskjaer really wants a trophy, and it kind of feels, not at the same level of Chelsea versus Manchester City in the preparations for the Champions League final, but it kind of feels like Manchester United players are fighting for their starting spot in that Europa League final. This really feels like the centrepiece of their season.
Do you think so? I think he knows his team. I think he's already got his team in his head. It feels to me that he's got a very close to settled team, and if maybe it's Greenwood or Rashford, and that's it. I would have them in the amber because I don't know what the truth about this team is, and I suspect that none of us do. That there's been this run of form where their defence is prone to lapses against teams where so many of these matches we've seen them be 1-0 down at half-time or concede early, and you're like, is it a really good sign of the team that they're capable of coming back and always winning these matches, as they have been against inferior opposition like Aston Villa? And it's definitely inferior opposition when no Jack Grealish is there. Or is it a sign of some weird kink in the system that next season, over the course, when the pressure is on, when it's not guaranteed they're going to be in the top 4, and it's also not guaranteed that they're not going to be competing for the title, because they're in this kind of weird no man's land at the moment, are they psychologically missing something? Is there a weakness in this team that sees them go behind against inferior opposition, that switches off? What's going on?
Is there something missing for Manchester United? Of course there's something missing. They need to make improvements to win the Premier League next season if they're going to do that. But is there something psychologically missing? I'm not sure. Like, I would definitely lean more towards the fact that they've got a better record coming from behind than any other team in the Premier League by a distance.
But they keep going behind.
They keep going behind. I hear your point.
Like, so how do you balance these out? So it's the start of next season, right? Let's say there's been no significant changes in terms of personnel in any of the major contenders. Well, obviously that's not going to happen. There will be some big signings, we know there will. But let's say you've got Chelsea, Manchester City, Liverpool have Van Dijk back, and you've got Manchester United. I don't know if anybody else thinks anybody outside of those 4 are legitimate title contenders at the start of next season. But how do you assess Manchester United going into the start of next season on the basis of what you've seen this year? Is it the team who rampages in the second half against Roma, or is it the team who, against Roma, concedes 3 goals in the second leg?
I think that the team that concedes 3 goals in the second leg against Roma is not a team we've seen overly often for Manchester City. Like, okay, there have been really bad breakdowns, like that situation where Demba Ba scores against them for Istanbul Basaksehir, for example, when all the Manchester United players were in the opposition half. It's like, what happened in that situation? Why was there such a mad meltdown? Like, what happened on the front of Victor Lindelof yesterday, for example, when Traoré scores that goal? Like, where are these little faults coming from? And I would definitely put that down to, I don't know, just maybe a lack of quality in that backline. That backline will give opportunities to opponents to take an early lead, to take a lead at some point in the game, and that is why Manchester United are in this position rather than some sort of psychological weakness. Okay, so then therefore they are not genuine title contenders over the course of the full season. I think it's very hard to make a case that they're going to finish above Chelsea and Manchester City next season. Liverpool, again, this will come back to the whole idea, will a full Anfield bring Liverpool back to the top table next season? I don't know. I don't think anybody can tell how real the problems are there. So I think that's your top four for sure. Manchester United are definitely in that, and they should be able to mount some sort of title challenge up until January, February again next season. But can they go beyond that is the question. Like, I mean, they've beaten Manchester City. That was during a period of time when Manchester City were playing some awesome football this season. They've got back to that level in recent weeks, but that was pre the Manchester City blip. There have been enough moments in big games this season for Manchester United where you're like, they have the raw elements to launch a sustained title challenge next season. I believe they can, but I just think Manchester City and Chelsea are better teams, and United can have a better season next year than this season and still finish third.
Okay. People have been touched to say that you, Owen, you need to go into the red today because you were like, oh, I'm going to talk about the Lakers in just a minute, and then you just skipped over them because obviously you weren't even paying attention to your own stuff.
I wasn't even paying attention to my own stuff. We went straight on to Amber from the advantage rule. You missed the one in the middle there, the Lakers. Despite the fact that they won last night, I just want to give these a quick mention because they lost a vital game on Friday night, early hours of Saturday morning Irish time against the Portland Trail Blazers, which puts the Los Angeles Lakers in jeopardy of not making the playoffs. This is the LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Los Angeles Lakers. Of course, LeBron hasn't been playing for a lot of the last few weeks. Anthony Davis is only after coming back. But the NBA, in order to counteract some early playoffs dullness, to counteract a smaller season, they've come up with this play-in tournament where the minnows of the basketball world, the romantic stories like the New York Knicks, may be able to get an opportunity to maybe get the feeling of some playoff basketball in Madison Square Garden, for example. Give the small guy a break. As it has turned out, the New York Knicks are going straight to the playoffs. They don't need any play-in tournament, but the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James do. The first round of their play-in tournament, which is a one-off game against an opponent on the current seedings, is going to be against Steph Curry's Golden State Warriors. Now, the loser does not go home automatically, but the loser goes home automatically if they lose the game after the game they lose here in the first game of the play-in tournament. So we could have Steph versus LeBron next week in a winner goes to the playoffs, loser is one game away from elimination, which is a game of massive consequence. Nobody at the start of the season thought the Lakers would be in this position. They're in a bad way, and sometimes LeBron needs a few games to ease his way into the playoffs, but he's not going to get that on this occasion. They're going to have to win back-to-back games, assuming they do fall into the play-in tournament. Anthony Davis was asked about LeBron last night, and he said, what I saw from LeBron today, he'll be fine. Trust me, he'll be fine.
He hasn't been playing because he's injured, because he wanted a rest. Is that what we don't know? It has been unspecified.
He got injured, came back, picked up another little ankle niggle when he came back, and now the theory is that they're just wrapping up in cotton wool because there is no point risking him. They're not going to fall out of the play-in tournament at this stage. We're into the final week of the
play-in tournament that you're just going to explain briefly to anybody who hasn't been paying attention to this.
So this is to give an opportunity for teams 7, 8, 9 and 10 in the East and in the West to qualify for the playoffs. So
who wouldn't normally qualify?
9 and 10. So it's usually just 1 to 8. So they've given 7 to 10 opportunities to qualify and join the top 6. The top 6 are automatically in. So 9 plays 10, 7 plays 8. Whoever loses 9 versus 10, they're out straight away. The winner then goes on to play the loser of 7 versus 8. The winner of 7 versus 8 will already have made the playoffs.
Okay.
And then the remainder...
It's just a way of making the last few weeks of the season even more interesting. And
exactly.
It does mean that like 20 teams essentially qualify for the playoffs because the play-in is actually still the playoffs.
Which is ridiculous. I think one of the reasons why they did it is that you never get an early round shock in the playoffs anymore unless there's a massive injury to the 1 seed. Nobody expected the Lakers to have to need this. This was not supposed to be a Lakers storyline whatsoever, and that is why they're in the red.
All right. Okay, so that is the crack with the red. We've already done the amber, Manchester United. We'll get to Rory McIlroy in just a minute, but let's start with Antrim Hurling. And I'm delighted to say Neil McManus is with us this morning. Neil, how the hell are you?
Very well this morning. Very well. How are you?
I'd say so. Talk us through your last point there, which is the game is tied and you're deep in your own half, picking a ball up and decide, I'm going to go for it from here. But you're like, I'd say 600 metres away from goal. What was going through your head?
Get the 4-iron out. No, I'd say all through the game we had kind of picked out nice passes to play, and Clare and I had a good goal opportunity, and Paddy Burke got his body in front of, and Ryan Elliott cleared it out, and we were trying a couple of passes together. I ended up with it in kind of a free shot, and some of the Darns often said to us, whatever is instinctive, do it, and luckily that one went over. So the boys are keeping me going. They say if you shoot enough, some of them are bound to go over.
To take the shot on, you obviously had a bit of confidence, not only that you were going to be able to make it, but that if it missed, there was not going to be any repercussions. That, I guess, comes from that point you're making there. The management structure gives you confidence to do this, but I think as well, the confidence that the team has must be the type of thing that liberates you and your teammates to be trying things in that scenario.
I think so, and really, had I been under huge pressure, maybe I would have passed it off again, but I had that the second just to line myself up for it. But as well as that, I think having come up from Division 2 last year and having played Joe McDonough last year, I don't think there's very much there are very many people giving Antrim a chance against any of these bigger teams. So there's an element of freedom there within our game. So we intend to enjoy each of these occasions.
Did the Donald Cusack comments filter into your camp?
Yeah, well, we heard them obviously that evening, but in fairness to Donald Cusack, his analysis of that game was pretty spot on. I thought it was a really nervy encounter from Antrim and Kerry, and neither of us gave a true reflection of the ability of our teams in the Joe McDonough final. I suppose there was just so much at stake for both counties, and it was the hurling was not to the level that had been exhibited throughout the Joe McDonough campaign. The final was, poor enough in truth. But, we knew there was far more in it, and that's we had commented, in a few days afterwards, and people that asked with the comments were saying, the analysis might not be too far off the mark, but, there'll be better days ahead.
Is that the sort of situation that brings this team on then, as you mentioned? A game that maybe wasn't as high quality as people expected, but I presume that was down to playing on All-Ireland final day and everything being on the line.
Yeah, and a huge amount of players on both sides had never played in Croke Park before. It was All-Ireland final day, but the big ticket was just in front of you. Win this one game and you were back into the Liam McCarthy, and that's massive for all hurlers. I suppose whenever there is so much at stake, you're going to have mistakes. You're going to have people doing things that they wouldn't normally do, and I think we just held it together slightly better than Kerry on the day, and that was all that was between the two teams actually.
It would have been obviously amazing to have a full Corrigan Park there yesterday. It's hopefully something we'll see over the next little while. Even from what you've heard on social media, text from your mates, what sort of reaction has this got across the county?
It's been very well received, obviously, but people within Antrim would know of the kind of team that we have, and the work that we're putting in. So I think there was a few people who had called this one and thought that we were in with a really good shout, and that's all if we set ourselves up properly and prepare really, really well and perform to the highest level, it gives us a chance. That's all it gives us. So it wasn't maybe just as big a shock in certain areas of the country as it was in Antrim, but still, it's our first time beating one of the Munster Championship teams in a long, long time anyway. Again, the bookmakers don't get it wrong too often, but thankfully they did yesterday.
Neil, I've recollections of Kilkenny being beaten in a league game, but I'm fairly sure it was up in Ballycastle. I don't really remember there being a big win like this in the city as well. And there's obviously huge geographical issues with the pockets of hurling that there are in the county, but outbreaks of victories like this, there will be more kids at training this week and next week and the week after as a result of a win like this. It's a long, hard struggle to make hurling as good as it could be in Antrim. Really, the city is the key to it, in my opinion, because the Glens is always very strong. North Antrim as a whole is very, very strong, vibrant hurling scene at the minute. But the city, you've got 300,000 people, in the city or thereabouts, and you have, unfortunately, only half of those people are interested in Gaelic games. But it's still a huge untapped resource for the level of participation we have. And there is a Gaelfast project which is in operation to try and resolve that and make some headway there. So hopefully, we'll see further funding
from the GA put into that programme, and then we can capitalise on what could be, because it's the second city of Ireland, and the GA scene here in it at the minute just isn't strong enough.
And again, like it's one small staging post along the way, but victories like that really help.
They do, and it's, at the end of the day, it's still just 2 points in a league campaign. There's 4 more games to play, but those things are a shot in the arm, definitely for hurling as a whole. But that doesn't solve the deeper-rooted issues that are there, still to be untangled and worked out.
Your decision to keep going, it's 14 seasons, I think, since you made your senior inter-county debut. Was there ever any doubt after you won last year that you were going to come back this year? And was it a difficult decision, or was it fairly straightforward?
It was straightforward in my mind. I think a couple of years ago the decision was kind of harder because it didn't seem like we were really going anywhere. But the progress was clear to be seen for probably most people inside the panel, more so than outside the panel, because it would be a big shock on winning a Joe McDonough or getting a promotion to 2A, as that's happened in the more recent future. But I think people inside the panel knew that we were progressing. So no, it definitely wasn't a hard decision to go back this year. Talk to us a little bit about the influence of Darren Gleeson, will you, and just the impact that he's having. Yeah, well, the thing that Darren has that is probably unavailable almost in the county is the experience of being an All-Ireland winner. He's been in those high-pressure situations, All-Ireland final day, and he brings that experience, and we get great confidence from that, I must admit, because he's telling us that Tipperary and Clare and Kilkenny are doing these things that we're now doing. So that gives you confidence, and that's probably something that we that outside influence has been missing for a few years. Yeah, and you can see the impact of it really quickly. It's funny how sometimes that extra voice from outside is the spark to bring people together. Yeah, it's just, I think he obviously understands the game very well, but he's just telling us, what you're doing is right. You're following the right processes. This is what's been done in all the top hurling counties. Keep following it. Keep doing what you're doing, and good things will happen. Yeah. Well, listen, Neil, a sensational win, a sensational winning score as well. And thanks a million for joining us this morning. Keep it up. Thank you very much. Neil McManus there, giving us some thoughts on the big story of the hurling weekend, and they're absolutely in the green this week. Absolutely in the green, and then it's off to Nolan Park for Antrim next Sunday, where Brian Cody will have the honour of going up against Darren Gleeson as manager. This is going to be an exciting few weeks for them, because they're obviously there, and these league games are massive moments for them, whereas they might come up against opponents who are trying things out, where they kind of view their provincial championships as bigger. But like the one thing that's kind of come out as a theme from yesterday is that this wasn't really a shock. You can kind of get the sense there from Neil that they expected that they'd be able to do something like this in this league campaign. And Ger Loughnane in the Irish Daily Star this morning saying that Clare losing to Antrim yesterday was no big surprise. So that seems to be one of the themes that we're getting over the course of the last 24 hours. It was a bit of a surprise. You've got to say it was a bit of a surprise. I didn't see it coming personally, but maybe it's the manner of the victory for them, where there was this kind of a little bit of a comeback early on, and then just these incredible moments, like the score obviously that you spoke to Neil about there a moment ago, that pop up at the end of the game. It's like this team kind of knows how to win a game like this. It didn't feel like they were shy about it, or that they kind of were reluctant to take the opportunities that presented themselves on the day. But that was certainly a no-brainer when it came to the green this week. Clare should have been in the red, obviously, right? We to spare their blushes this week, and because it's the first round of the league, we're going to take it easy on them. Is that what you're thinking? Yeah, as I said, there's a lot of contenders in the red. I did give them a passing mention there. We'll get into a bit of Clare with Paddy Stapleton later, but I suppose once something like this happens to the banner, you go to Ger Loughnane to see what he is saying about them, and he uses phrases like massive crisis in Clare. We haven't won an under-21 game in 5 years, are being beaten by an average of 12 points. The players coming through are genuine, but the quality is very, very low in the eyes of Ger Loughnane. He said you would struggle to find 5 banner players of top-class inter-county quality, so it's pretty tough stuff. He says people have been warning, I'm not sure who these people are, people have been warning that Clare could be a Joe McDonough Cup team when the day comes.
that Tony Kelly is not there. So I hadn't heard that particular phrase before, but if you take Tony Kelly out of Clare, Ger is putting forward the argument that they're a Joe McDonagh Cup team. The biggest problem is that there are so few people in the county able to judge the standard and realise that is the situation, and none of them are in the county board. So I think you can probably guess where he is pointing the finger at one of the main problems in Clare at the moment. And it is impossible to separate yesterday's defeat from what's been going on in the county over the last
You can't. It's literally the only topic of conversation that comes up. Were the players distracted by everything that was going off the field? Is kind of like one of the first questions that gets asked of Brian Lohan, and he's like, I mean, I don't think so. But were they? I don't know. It's how do you separate this massive, the house is on fire and you're asked to go out and hurl on the pitch while you're watching the house on fire going, is that something that we need to be concerned about? Who else is in the red? Or in the green? Sorry, last one for green for now.
The green, Rory McIlroy is who we've already touched on this morning here at the top of the show, but he is in the green. He is back to winning ways, hasn't won since China at the end of 2019. All of our lives have been screwed up since the end of 2019. Rory McIlroy is no different, and I don't know, maybe he's right. Maybe this is just a comeback. Maybe he is the USPGA favourite. Grey
in that beard as well. Is that since the birth?
First win as a father on American Mother's Day, no less. Not quite Irish Mother's Day, but like these are all the different factors that he was asked about afterwards. But the big thing is the energy of that Quail Hollow crowd. That really spurred him on to victory in the end.
Is there anything more worrying than waking up on American Mothering Sunday and seeing your Twitter feed, everybody wishing everybody Mother's Day, and going, oh no, did I forget? And then you realise every year it's like those crazy Americans and their different dates from us. I don't know why we haven't synchronised this or why they haven't just copied us, because obviously we were first. But
it's a scandal, really. That
really is
sorted out.
Every Monday morning on OTB AM, we give you the chance to win a Gillette starter pack. All you got to do is send us in your suggestions. Who should have made the cut after the weekend that was? You can get in touch throughout the show. We'll pick a winner out before 9:30. We want to know the good, the bad, and the grand. So the grand is obviously in amber. Some suggestions. Lewis Hamilton needs to make the cut, and Chelsea, says Claff88. Ronan says Antrim for beating Clare. They did make it. Mo Yassin says stick Sam Allardyce in the red for his first relegation. Poor big Sam. That record gone. Does that mean he's off the managerial gravy train? Does it? Does that mean no one's going to... Or does that mean that whoever's first in... is it Norwich next season? He'll be reaching for the big Sam. Missed performance rankings, but Milan beat Juve in Turin for the first time in 10 years. The race for fourth, an important game. Milan won 3-0. And then surely Man City, and in particular Sergio Aguero, needed to be in the red in the pressure rankings. They didn't win the title and gave the advantage to Chelsea, with the Champions League final coming in a few weeks. Certainly Aguero is getting it in the neck from a lot of people for his performance at the weekend. But we might talk about that with Mark Lawrenson a little bit later on. So our performance rankings: the number 5, the GA advantage rule. Number 4, LeBron James and the Lakers. Number 3, Man United next season. Number 2, Rory McIlroy, Quail Hollow. And number 1 were the Antrim Hurlers, who beat Clare. We'll announce the competition winner a little later this morning.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock for you here on OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. Between now and 10, we've got Mark Lawrenson, hurling analysis with Paddy Stapleton at 8:15. We've got Mark Lawrenson coming along after that, talking about the weekend's football. If you've got any questions for Laura, now would be a good time to get them in. Alan Quinlan's going to join us at 9:05 to look back on the weekend. A bit of madness. Kind of definitely feels like some teams are a little bit on the beach at the moment. And then reaction from Brian Kerr, who did the Villa Man United game. And we'll also have more reaction from the second game yesterday as well. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, 087 918 180. It was Vinny Perth on commentary duty in the second game. And some interesting stuff coming from that, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show with Laura too. In the meantime, as I said, a packed show. We're going to take you to the sports pages and Paddy Stapleton next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
And I was looking to find out what England were complaining about, and I suggested that it might have been offside. And then I realised, for goodness sake, it was a mistake by the defender that played the ball to Shilton and Maradona. I said it was pure football genius, because the contrast between the two moments. I mean, in one, he was absolutely a cheat, and the next moment, he was absolutely world class.
Off the Ball, Saturdays from 1 on OTB Sports Radio. Listen live on the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
At Online Tradesmen, we've never been busier. And if you're a trade professional, there's never been a better time to join us. Access over €17 million worth of jobs nationwide every month, along with e-learning and other supports. Need a website for your business? It's included in your membership. And on average, Online Tradesmen members get up to 10 times their fee back in new sales, marketing tools and savings. Apply today at onlinetradesmen.ie. Online Tradesmen, the home of qualified trade professionals.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, it's 6 minutes past 8. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. We missed two things there. Wes Houlihan, obviously. Did he score in the last day of the season?
He did.
Yeah.
He scored. Cambridge got promotion from League Two, but most importantly, this is how he celebrated afterwards. Like, that is the coolest photograph of an Irish sports person this year, and it won't be topped.
It looks like it's been properly poured as well. Like, maybe there's a club bar there, or maybe he got like one of those Adrian Barry stories. I don't know. Fair play to Wes. That is fairly sensational. And DK Metcalf.
And DK Metcalf, the other person we wanted to mention on the green. Like, I mean, it wasn't a successful weekend in essence for DK Metcalf, but the fact that he existed in this sphere is quite incredible. If you're not familiar with this is the Seattle Seahawks player DK Metcalf, who I'm not sure was going to break away from the NFL, but he certainly flirted with athletics for the last few weeks. He wanted to see if he could compete in the trials, the Olympic trials, for the 100-metre sprint. So at the weekend was essentially the trial for the trials, and he finished 9th in his heat in a time of 10.37 seconds. I'm not sure if we're going to play the video here, but he is 6 foot 3 inches, 220 pounds.
He's in lane 2, I presume.
Lane 2, the big guy.
Look at the size of him compared to the rest of them. So he's not getting completely annihilated here. Finishes last, but not bad.
Yeah, the winner won the race, Craven Gillespie in that particular heat, 10.11. And Metcalf ran 10.36, so there's a bit of a gap there, but pretty incredible really for somebody who's 6 foot 3. Kind of puts into perspective just how insane the sprinters are that don't even get in within a shout of actually making the Olympic sprint team.
Famously, DK Metcalf, when he was drafted, Pete Carroll ripped off his shirt to kind of show, because he was the most jacked of all the players in the draft that year. I'm going to run you through the sports pages. We can start with otbsports.com. This is Kieran Bradley's piece about the Ian Wright documentary. He says the perfect choice to show the horror of abuse. Home Truths was the name of the documentary, and highly recommended by Kieran. Alan McLaughlin was much more than that night in Windsor Park, says Brian Kerr. Moyes dejected after hopes of a top 4 finish dealt major blow, and Solskjaer issues worrying update on Maguire injury, so we'll see what the crack with that is. And Dennis Taylor has officially retired from snooker as well. So back page of the Irish Sun this morning, Crash and Harry. All squad fears and pile up after Maguire. Well, this is the week, of course, that they're playing 4 games in 1 week. Neil does miracles. Ant-Hero stuns Clare. Ant-Hero. Big Sam is down, and Pep will prep City rookies. That's the story of that one. Antrim ensure first weekend of season is one to remember, and that's the scoreboards operator in the home of the Johnnies, Corrigan Park, celebrating at full time, 121 to 22 points, a 2-point victory for Antrim. Bennett poised to leave team at end of season. So Sam Bennett had a lightning start to this season as well, right? And had 2 wins in the Tour of the Algarve. He's consolidated his position as cycling's best sprinter this season, says Shane Stokes in his piece. And his team manager has said the Irishman would ideally like to stay with the squad. Other squads are offering salaries that the manager is unable to match. We've been looking at these kind of figures. It could be as much as 5 million.
It's amazing. Like, I mean, the sprinters really do so much for their sponsor, and they're such valuable commodities to each team. I'm not surprised to hear that. But
no, sorry, the 5 million figure isn't in this piece here from Shane Stokes, but that's what, if you look at like what the big sprinters have made in their absolute heyday, and like he's going to be the favourite for the green jersey. Is he going to be the favourite? I don't know. I need to check that out. But certainly himself, and he's exactly. And I'm pretty sure Sagan,
yeah,
was making many millions more than everybody else. And Arsenal stuck it up to Sagan last year and beat him off. And you're like, yeah, absolutely. So why shouldn't he make 5 million? Happy days, fair play to him. The Mirror, L for Ari. El Ghazi challenge leaves Maguire a major doubt for a Europa League final as Villa boss Smith fumes over pathetic penalty decision. Belfast sinking feeling for woeful banner, and 5-star rebels. Cork are back is the assumption on the first weekend that you don't read anything into the league, but you do read something. That's how it goes. You take what you can. The front page of the Irish Indo this morning: a mess in the making. After defeat to Antrim, Clare management, players and county board need to pull in the right direction quickly before the season goes off the rails. That's Brendan Cummins' take on that. Misery for Moyes as well there. Cavani could be another Cantona. That's the view from one of the columnists in the Irish Indo this morning if he sticks around. Lohan admits pressure is on after Banner's shock defeat for Antrim. And of course, as the scripting gods would have it, if you were one of the writers on Friday Night Lights and you were like, we're going to have the team have a shock defeat in the first game of the season, in the second game of the season they're going to come up against their old nemesis Davy, Fitz and Wexford, nobody would believe it. You'd say that doesn't make any sense. You can't, if you were scripting it, you'd write it in the last one when something was really on the line. But the ratcheted up tension that there is now between Clare and Wexford as a result of what happened last weekend. Of course, Wexford were like absolutely dominant in their first game, so it's set up nicely next weekend for what's supposed to be a meaningless league fixture is suddenly imbued with meaning.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think they've drafted in David Chase into Croke Park to write these storylines. Just a couple of papers on my side of things. Too hot to handle is the headline on Cork. I think Tony Lean was making the point on Twitter yesterday. It's the first time in a while that Cork have actually been on the front of the Examiner sports section. So that is an absolute signifier that Cork Hurling is back. And then Harry's pain is the main headline on the back of the Irish Daily Star, but kind of a little tease of the Gerlach 9 column I mentioned earlier on. It's not all about Clare. His main bulk is about Limerick. He's making the point that Limerick's panel is not as strong as some people think.
Two interesting, very quick stories from the back page of the London Times. The one there is European Cup final set for Wembley. European football teams were prepared to move this month's All-English Champions League final from Istanbul to Wembley. The UK government's decision to place Turkey in the travel red list last Friday threw UEFA's plans into chaos, with Manchester City and Chelsea and up to 12,000 of their fans faced with the possibility of needing to quarantine for 10 days upon the return from the game on May 29th. So we'll see what happens with that. And then Story Drug TUE. This is, don't believe anything you see. This is an exclusive from Matt Lawton. Dame Sarah Story, Britain's most successful female Paralympian, had to be issued with a retroactive TUE, a therapeutic use exemption, at the London Games in 2012 after a urine sample she gave produced an adverse analytical finding for a performance-enhancing substance. So the line, it was salbutamol. She won gold in the Olympics, having tracked down her opponent in she's in cycling's individual pursuit. A little more than halfway into the 3-kilometre race, she had caught and defeated her opponent. So you can just TUE it in. I don't know. Do you believe anything you see anymore? I'm not sure. 087 918 180 is the WhatsApp number if you want to get in touch with us this morning. 13 minutes past 8. Let's turn our attention to the weekend's hurling. Paddy Stapleton is with us. Paddy, good morning to you. How are you?
Not too bad, Owen. Gerard, how are you?
I'm good. Let's start with Clare and Antrim, right? I know a lot of people are saying it wasn't that much of a shock, but it was. It really was a shock.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, and it's not disrespectful to say, any time a traditionally lesser county beats a traditionally stronger one, it is a shock. So I think you're nearly being more condescending saying, oh, it's not a shock. Nobody knew what was going to come. But I watched a lot of that match yesterday, most of the match yesterday, and they're full value for for a kind of a close win. They didn't dominate Clare, and Clare didn't dominate them, but they certainly, deserved their win at the end. And they played some really good stuff, and I think that's the key. The Antrim played good stuff. This wasn't a no-show by Clare. They were physically up for it, they were mentally there, and just they were beaten by the better team in the day.
Is there a belief that Antrim are better placed to make a sustained charge at breaking up the Super League, as it were, when it comes to hurling at the moment, more so than, say, Laois, when we saw their shock win against Dublin a couple of years ago?
I think it's very early to say that, because things were stacked in their favour in terms of you're playing in Corrigan Park. It feels like a club venue. Even yesterday when you were watching on television, it actually felt like a club match with a nice crowd there. And that when the momentum was going, that they were able to support each other. You could see Darren Gleeson on the sideline and his backroom team. They could talk to each other on the field and hear each other. I just feel like they need to get into a big stadium, maybe at Páirc Uí Chaoimh, where it nearly feels empty. And sometimes a simple stadium or Croke Park, wherever it is, and you nearly feel deserted at times, and it's kind of hard to get momentum. And I think then maybe you'd see if they put 2 or 3 good performances together there in a big, wide, expansive pitch, because to my mind, or to my eye, they're a quite strong team, Antrim, but I don't know how much their legs will go in a big field like Croke Park, Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and after a couple of league games in a row. So there are still question marks there, but you couldn't argue with their start.
So it's a physical thing, and the conditioning thing is the next part of their test really over the next few weeks.
I think that's a huge test, especially when you're the team that hasn't the ability of some of the bigger teams. And to me, they are quite strong looking, but again, I'll have to see how their legs are after 2 or 3 games. But other signs are brilliant. I think what the signs that are really good is their decision making. What way Darren has them hurling. Even near the end of the game, I would say some of the younger Clare players were panicking on the ball and getting blocked down, and they didn't need to, compared to the Antrim guys who were making the smart decisions, running hard, but not down blind alleyways and making scores for each other. So I think it was a very, very adept performance. Darren couldn't be happier. Like, I was talking to Darren a number of weeks ago, and we hadn't talked about this year, but he said last year he had alluded to the fact that he wasn't, and they weren't that happy with their Joe McDonagh final performance. So I suppose, look, I'm not sure many of us had seen any of their other performances last year, so maybe this was no surprise to them.
And look, I mean, if we could have any other teams breaking into the Super League, as Eoin so succinctly put it, that would be great, because we need Dublin to be really good and to be successful, and actually if Antrim were to get to that point as well, then that would be good for everybody. But let's talk about Clare, because I actually kind of really hope that Clare were going to build on last year, and that they would have players returning from injury and travel, and Tony Kelly could well be the best hurler in the country, certainly could well be the best hurler of his generation, and here they are in absolute crisis after round 1 of the league.
Yeah, and they are, and I suppose after the winter they've had and the spring, this is really not what they needed. I suppose this fixture was always a banana skin, and something they probably didn't need starting off away from home up in Antrim. I suppose I've gone up to Antrim once or twice with Tipperary, and you are saying to yourself, God, this is going to be a struggle up here. So it is a tough place to go. But now, I suppose Brian is really wondering himself, how am I going to get this back on track? And the league is the sort of thing, I don't think you can ever guarantee a good year after a good league, but I really think it's difficult to pick it up if you have a bad league. So maybe it's the fixture they need next week. There won't be much talk probably to the players needed with Davy coming back around town. But they need to get it back on track next week, because as I say, when you're going bad, it's, yourself, it's like anything in life. When things are going against it, it's very hard to pull it back on track.
It's funny, it's far more pronounced in hurling than it is in football, that you can't turn it around after. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because there are more skills to the game, and so therefore you need more people to be more proficient. Your 7 out of 10 performance is much more difficult to get in hurling than it is in football.
Yeah, I remember going through it several times in Tipperary, unfortunately. In the league, I can remember a couple of, I think it was 2014, I remember down in Galway, and we were just in disarray. We only lost by a point, but it was the greatest hammering of 1 point loss that we ever got. I said to myself, where are we even going? Everyone was giving it 100%. trying maybe too hard. And it's just that flow isn't there. I think you think too much. And hurling, opposed to other games, it's a fraction of a second thinking. It's a flow, it's a reading of the game, it's confidence. And when it's not there, you overthink everything. You try too hard. Every ball you go to, you're questioning it. And it is the sport where you have to work on a lot of just kind of instinct. So when it's going against you, it is really hard to turn.
That's interesting. Is that like everything that's happening off the field could actually have an impact where you're suddenly trying too hard? You feel like you're trying to fix a problem that isn't your problem.
Yeah, well, there is talk about you. I suppose a lot of the time, look, if there's stuff going on off the field, it doesn't have a huge impact, but it certainly doesn't help. And maybe there would have been a pressure there to start well in this season, but I think it's it's very worth looking at the fact that they had a lot of young players as well playing the other day. They had a nice mix, but they had some young players, and you could see it near the end of the game. The pressure was getting to them in terms of just their decision making being turned over. There was a bit of a melee on the sideline, which showed a bit of inexperience or a bit of angst near the end when they didn't need a stop and play. And it was interesting. I got up the team this morning that played Galway 3 years ago in the All-Ireland semi-final, and there's a huge amount missing from that at the minute. So I think Ger Loughnane is, as he can be, a touch harsh, because Clare's in a huge county. So them missing 3 or 4 players from 3 years ago is massive, and certainly I think they're lacking a little bit of quality at the minute.
Can you talk us through John Conlon at centre back? How did he play, and if you take the result away, is there a future for him there?
I think the first half he seemed to get on a lot of ball, but I do think he was relatively free, and I do think that they had a breeze. So he was actually supplying brilliant ball into the likes of Sheahan O'Donnell, who was really profiting off it. Is there a future? I don't know. Could they afford to have him at centre back? If you have a big, strong, skillful forward, it's very hard to argue to put him in the backs, especially when Clare probably don't have that in abundance. So when he gets, I think it was probably a way of kind of getting him back into the mix. Maybe he was a year out. He's getting older. Maybe they'd want to just push him back into the team gradually. But I couldn't see him staying there with what they're lacking up front. Now, the other thing is they probably lack a centre-back at the minute. David McInerney comes back in. Conor Cleary sometimes plays there, and Patrick O'Connor can play full-back, but they are lacking at centre-back. So I'm not certain what they're going to do, but I couldn't see John Conlon staying into backs if he was fit enough to play up front. Now, second half, I thought he struggled a bit more, and it's more of a positional thing. He was fine on the ball, a bit of a mistake late on, getting turned over, but apart from that, he did fine, but I just wouldn't see it as the future of them having their strongest team in the field.
It's interesting as to why they went for that particular position, though. Like, is it reading too much into it to kind of compare it with Kyle Hayes and what's happened to him under John Kiley over certainly last season, maybe even Cian Lynch moving back a position as well into midfield over the last few seasons, that maybe they feel that as a half-back you can actually contribute quite handsomely to the scoreline?
Well, you can. I think that's an element, and you could actually see by his direct strikes, like, if I was playing centre-back, I wouldn't be noted for my striking, so I'd be looping balls forward, okay, and you'd be doing well to get him over the half-back line and a good ball down, but he was getting the ball, dropping it and striking as hard as he could, and they were going hurley high over the half-back line. Now, that's a great asset to have. The other thing is, if you put a guy back, a very good forward, it pains me to say it, a very good forward or a good forward can make an excellent backman. It's easier to play there in general, especially around the half-back line. Centre-back where you're generally free. So when you're getting up the ages, I mean, it's like a holiday for you, I'd say, going back centre-back, where you're not expected too much of follow-on runners and stuff like that. So I would see it a little bit more like that John Conlon, he's played, what has he played since 2011 at senior level. So he's there a while, a lot of injuries. So I think it's more like a little break, give him a lease of life, give him less pressure of being that ball winner up front. But he'd have no problem shooting, I'm sure, if the chance arose.
Can we talk about Cork? Because when you were talking about teams being able to work out bad form from the league and how difficult it is, obviously from Cork's perspective, they want to take good goal scoring form into the championship and see where that takes them. For so long, over the last decade or so, every year we're like, maybe this is the year that Cork put it all together. And one of the things that has been missing is goal scoring. And then on yesterday and Sunday. Obviously, they stick 5 past Waterford. Now, some of them came very late, so it's hard to know. But like, you know, late scores, they still count.
They still count, but they overran them, Ger.
Yeah.
I think that's the important point. Is all through the game, whatever it was, they scored 2 or 3 near the end, but before that, they may have 2 or 3 scored, but they certainly had 6 goal chances before that. So the writing was on the wall all through the game. A little bit concerned for Waterford, but back to Cork. Cork looked a different animal yesterday. Now, again, you can't kind of pin all your hopes on the league, what way you're going, and I don't think Waterford provided enough pushback yesterday. But I did see something different in Cork. I mean, it's no coincidence. They've quite a good backroom team. Donald O'Grady, we hear him on RT all the time. He's the most pragmatic of commentators, I'd say, that's out there. So he has a real defined way he sees that Cork team playing, a structure. I mean, we remember the mid-noughties teams with the half backline they had, the midfield they had. They were so well structured. And that's the way they looked the other day. There was maybe was there a half goal chance for Calum Lyons in the first half, and there was that chance which was just a consolation goal at the end for Waterford. In between that, apart from that, they were very locked up tight at the back, and that's not what you consider Cork to be over the last few years. So I think they're great signs for them, and if they don't concede goals, they have a serious and scores in general, which they have over the last few years. They have a serious amount of scores up front, and I just like the addition of the 2 corner forwards. We're not saying they're better than what was there before, better than Alan Cadigan, better than Shane Kingston, but they had a hard edge up front. They were very willing runners, and the Waterford back certainly didn't get time in the ball.
And a bit of depth for Kingston to be coming off the bench.
Exactly, and also hunger. There's nothing like thinking you're always on the team, and it's not that they consciously feel that, but when somebody's after your tail, it gives you that couple of percentage, and that's in every sport. Say, well, I have to perform today, and there's nothing wrong with pressure. I think if people say you're better off with no pressure at all playing matches, I think it's ridiculous. You have to have some sort of pressure that has the central nervous system on edge, and certainly they've put it up to Alan Cadigan, certainly they've put it up to Kingston, and of course coming off the bench for 2 goals as well from Alan Connolly. I think, you know, they're really after finding a few players and a few options.
So you're obviously seeing a structure to Cork's defence that's a little bit new. It's not just the hunger and the hunting of numbers. There is a lot of method to it.
There is method to it. Now, I will say that there was a hard edge. There seemed to be a very, very hard edge. I would say they were never left with numbers very, very open. And to work hard, see, you just hear people say you have to work hard, but to work hard you have to be setting a structure to allow your team to work hard. So around the middle of the field, there was no time for the Waterford guys to take good ball in. I think Mark Coleman as a centre back could be a very good option. I think he's after putting on a bit of strength. He looks certainly bigger, and he needed that. I felt he would get physically dominated a little bit in games. And Tim O'Mahony looks stronger. Now, he has a lot to prove still. He's hanging around the panel for a while. But they certainly were able to sit in. The 2 cornerbacks were attacking out in front of the ball, which is always the best place to be. The minute your man gets the ball, you're only on damage limitation. So, look, they looked really good. Patrick Collins looked good in the goals. He was trying to find his men out the field, and it was very progressive. Now, they just have to keep that up, because we've had this out of Cork before for the last 10 years, maybe since that great team, with that fantastic half backline. But this is the trick now, is to repeat it, be consistent, and when things go against them, which they didn't really yesterday, that they're still able to answer that.
Mark Coleman's still only 23, won't be 24 until December, so like we are entering the Mark Coleman era of him being at his absolute peak, and you think of how brilliant he's already been to this point. So I don't know, it always felt like Cork were this sleeping giant that needed something to fall for them. And again, we're completely overreacting. It's Overreaction Monday here, after the first round of the league to all of this. Because like Clare could go out next weekend and absolutely batter Wexford, and who knows what happens. But at the same time, the season is so short that if you find yourself in a black hole, very difficult to play your way out of it. But it's also, if you bounce through it with a bit of confidence and a few breaks of a ball here and there, and the refereeing going your way, all of a sudden you find yourself in the latter stages of an All-Ireland. It's like you feel a bit bulletproof.
Absolutely, it's a game of confidence. I know most sports are a game of flow, as I was saying. So if a team comes into it, like Waterford coming out of it yesterday, I know I've been there where you lose in All-Ireland and there's kind of a hangover the year after. It's the best word for it. You're still in that mode. You think you're not, but there's still something there where other teams are completely moved on because they got nowhere near the All-Ireland. So a Cork would know how much that they have to improve, whereas a Waterford, we don't know where their headspace is either. So that that's a mitigating thing that we have to look at for the Cork win as well. But they, it's very interesting looking at those two teams yesterday. Waterford looked like they're at the bottom of the barrel, and Cork looked like they could be All-Ireland contenders. But as you said, overreaction Monday, we kind of have to keep it all in perspective.
Yeah, Waterford lost by 7 points and conceded 5 goals. Do you know, it's not that much really. I know obviously the game flow would suggest that they were fairly lucky to only lose by 7 points, but there's probably stuff that's that brains trust are looking at and going, fix this, fix this, fix that. You still rack up a massive score.
I think so. Yeah, but look, they won't panic over that. They wouldn't be happy with it, and maybe it's something that Liam Cahill can use it to beat his team with for the next few weeks. But no, they even in the last, it was before the goals in the last few minutes, they were coming back to 5 and 4 points down, which they should never have been. So I think he'd be quietly happy with that. He'd be happy with Austin Gleeson, how he performed, the way he looked physically, his passing. Like, you'd often think Austin Gleeson catch the ball and shoot, but I mean, his pass for Callum Lyons' goal attempt yesterday was unbelievable. So he'd be happy with a couple of things like that. I think the full back line were under 5 goals. I'd say there's no positives. I think they did well at times yesterday. Kieran Bennett scored 3 unbelievable points from back. So they have things they can work on, and I'm sure the management team won't be panicking too hard.
Okay, let's keep everything into perspective. Limerick are finished, they're undercooked, and they didn't come anywhere near tip on it in reality on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, thank God. Thank God we have it again. Yeah, look, it was a good game. I think Tip, do you know what? They're as well off they didn't win the game, because we can't stay here and say, look, Tip won, they're right up at the All-Ireland contention. It was a draw, and I remember I was watching it the other day, saying when we were a point up, when Tip were a point up, but maybe 2 minutes ago, I said I'd definitely take a draw here, because even a slight loss there, a turnover, 2 points in the last couple of minutes, that would have been a tough take for Tipperary. Even a good performance. I thought it was a good performance. That would have been tough, but they played well, reasonably well. I think my most concerning thing from a Tip point of view would be Jason Ford scored all but I think 6 points for Tip. So, or maybe it was 8, but they need a little bit more. They were a little clunky up front, whereas Limerick, their times in the first quarter and the last quarter looked like they could tear the defence apart a little bit. But no, I think both teams will be happy. They both tried out new players, and they both have maybe a couple more options that they weren't sure about beforehand.
Have Tip surrendered a puck out against Limerick before?
I'd say they would have tried it over the last number of years, and I think that's the thing when you play a team like Limerick. They're very well coached. They have a specific system, but it's a varied one, and they've options on puckouts, they've options on frees when they're coming out of defence. So I think you have to feel that, and I think more so the management team have to be on the sideline and looking at what they're playing against before they can come up with the right plans. So I think it was obvious to see. It looked quite like football in terms of, we think a couple of years ago, and maybe once it gets to an All-Ireland semi-final stage, of men hunting in packs. I was wondering yesterday, is the hunting in packs mentality in a forward line gone now? Is it mostly structure based and try and pull them out to midfield and then tackle them? So I think they got it wrong in the first quarter. Tip were standing off, but they were too passive. So there's a decision-making process to make. Yes, you stand off, you don't want to get overlapped, but when it comes to around mid-65-metre line of Waterford's half, then you have to really engage them in a pack, in a domino effect. And I didn't think we did that early on, but once Tip got the balance right, I think they were able to get on top. But again, I think it's obvious when Limerick are missing players, like every other team, they won't be as assured of themselves.
We put the advantage rule in the red in this week's Gillette performance rankings because it looked like we had not a perfect advantage rule up to this point, and there's been a tampering with it, and it doesn't look like the result is an improvement in the game, is it?
No, it isn't. It was very stop-start now. And I will say, when you're coming back, like I'd say Limerick had a more extended off time than Tip. I know when you're coming back and your fitness probably isn't just at the same level as the other team, you are more likely to foul. But look, we can't put up with that sort of stuff. We had a pretty good advantage rule. It needed a tweak, but to rely on the referees, and that's my big problem. There's nothing against them. They're doing their best, and most of them are very good. But to rely on them to actually read the game in advance that much, like, I wouldn't be trusting them now. So I think to give them the extra few seconds to see where it's developing, I think people really kind of appreciated that over the last few years. I think the only thing they really wanted to change, what I saw a problem with, was if an attacker had the ball, he got fouled, but he got the advantage, and he got fouled again for a free or a penalty closer to goal, that they gave that decision instead of went back for the previous. That was the only previous foul. That was the only tweaking I saw, really, that needed.
Spoken like a true defender there, Paddy.
Definitely.
Hang on, that first foul is the important one, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I brought him down inside the penalty area, so we'll forget about that. But yeah, that was, to me, that was the only issue I saw. And I don't know, sometimes you'd be looking for a rule change for 10 years and they'd be slow to make it, and I didn't hear anybody say that this rule needs to be changed, and here we are. First day of the league talking about giving out about it.
Yeah, okay. Well, we didn't talk about Dublin and Kilkenny. Very quickly, is there anything on that kind of struck you specifically?
I thought it was one of the poor games of the weekend, to be honest with you. I know, take into account it's the first league match. I think Kilkenny will be happier. They found a couple of players. They're still a little mixed on their style. They're very good when they break and when they dispossess the team in midfield and they break hard. They're gone very good at that, using the ball, but they're still struggling when they have to break down an opposition from inside their own half-back line. So they'll be happy. Dublin, some good performances. They don't look like they're going to make another jump, but as I said, after the first game, very hard to know.
Yeah, and look, again, overreaction Monday here, but sure, that's the whole point of these things. We get to overreact because we've been so starved for so long. It's great to have it back. Great to have you back as well, Paddy. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Paddy Stapleton giving us some thoughts this overreaction Monday here on OTB AM. 37 minutes past 8 for you. Wayne says in the performance rankings, Rory McIlroy's caddy should be there. He told him to put his ego away and take the drop, and ultimately it made them a lot of money and it got them a victory, which is at this point by far the most important thing. Richard says that Hurling photo will surely be on every pub wall in the country. Certainly every football pub anyway. Issel Cody says, surely Billy Joe Saunders in red, a man who criticised Daniel Dubois for taking a knee in his fight and then this weekend had a similar injury and had to retire on his stool. Justice seems to have been administered when Canelo absolutely thumped Billy Joe Saunders on Saturday night in the early hours of Sunday morning our time. John Dooley says, Clare in trouble, lads. Antrim won't lay a hand on Limerick or Tip, etc. And then Paul Avery says, lads, are we giving Antrim enough credit for a good display? I hope we've given them some credit this morning. We had Neil McManus on with us a little bit earlier on. If you missed that, you can catch it on the OTB Podcast Network. Just subscribe to our OTB GAA feed and you'll be able to get that and all the other good stuff there for you as well. We're going to be talking football on OTB AM in a couple of minutes' time. But first, Neil Treacy is with us this morning. Neil, good morning to you.
Morning, guys. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's difficult to know where to start. That's one of those proper bumper sporting weekends that we haven't had in a long time.
Yeah, it's great. I suppose we will just start with Rory McIlroy, though, I suppose, because it's the most recent one as well. And it was it as unexpected as Antrim beating Clare? But the way Rory McIlroy's form is, you might have said it possibly was. But we'll start there because he ended his 18-month wait for a PGA Tour victory last night. Four-time major winner claimed the Wells Fargo Championship at Quail Hollow last night for the third time in his career. A 3-under par final round of 68 was enough for him to edge out Mexico's Abraham Ancer by one shot. The 32-year-old's return to form is timely as well as he prepares for the USPGA Championship in a couple of weeks' time at Kiowa Island, where he won his second major in 2012. And he says this is the most important victory he's had in the last 3 years.
I feel like it's similar to the win in Bay Hill in 2018. I hadn't won for a while. Doubts creep in and you don't know if you're ever going to be the same player, and it's natural, but it feels similar to that. That was a big win. That was a catalyst to what followed in 2019 and having a great season then, and hopefully this is a springboard to other success.
West Brom, meanwhile, are the second team confirmed to be relegated from the Premier League, Sam Allardyce's side, so their unlikely fights for survival ended by Arsenal last night, losing 3-1 away to the Gunners. Emile Smith-Rowe, Nicola Pepe and Willian all scored for the hosts, sending West Brom down to the Championship. It's the first time Allardyce has suffered relegation from the top division in his long managerial career. So that will be the pub question for years to come. West Brom will be the answer. The final relegation spot could be confirmed tonight, though, with Fulham hosting Burnley. A win for the visitors would see Scott Parker's Fulham also consigned to relegation after one season back in the Premier League, and it would keep Burnley safe again. Kickoff in London is at 8 o'clock. Elsewhere yesterday, Manchester United kept Man City's title coronation waiting for a couple more days at least. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side staved off the inevitable with a come-from-behind 3-1 win against Aston Villa at Villa Park. United could still hand City the title this week, though, with games against both Leicester City and Liverpool to come in the next 4 days. And West Ham's hopes of finishing in the top 4 were dealt a massive blow. They were beaten 1-0 by Everton at the London Stadium, thanks to Dominic Calvert-Lewin's 16th goal of the season. The result means the Hammers stay 5th in the table, but they are now 5 points back from 4th place Leicester City. And in Gaelic games, as you were just discussing beforehand, Antrim caused the shock of the weekend as the Alliance Hurling League got underway. Late points for Kieran Clark and Neil McManus saw them edge out Clare in Division 1 Group B on a scoreline of 121 to 22 points. Elsewhere, All-Ireland finals, Waterford were no match for Cork in Group A. Alan Connolly scoring 2 goals for the Rebels as they won 5-22 to 127, while Wexford hammered Laois 4-17 to 10 points at Chadwick's Wexford Park. Micheál Dwyer with 2 goals for Davy Fitzgerald's side, while Rory O'Connor and Conor Hearn also found the back of the net. And speaking to Southeast Radio, manager Davy Fitzgerald says there was plenty to be pleased with yesterday.
There is aspects we can be better on, but we've 9 changes from the championship team last year. So there was a lot of fellas playing that didn't play championship last year, and happy with that. And there's lads that need games. I still think it's going to take us a few games, but the job is to try and win as many games as I can with Wexford and see where it brings us to. And in the league, we're going to try that, and we're also going to try and use as many players as we can.
13 different scorers today as well.
Yeah, that was good. Like with 4 goals, probably should have had 6. We had the opportunities, which is good to see. There will be wides we wouldn't be happy with, but you know what? It's 5 months since we played a game, so we're happy. Just would have been nice to have a few supporters around.
And finally then, Sam Bennett secured the green jersey at the Volta Algarve yesterday evening. The Carrican Show rider won 2 stages in the Portuguese race during the week. Portugal's João Rodrigues enjoyed overall victory, though, pipping British rider Ethan Hayter by 9 seconds.
Good stuff, Neil. Thanks very much for that. Neil Treacy giving us the sports news this morning here at 8:42. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180. We're still asking you for the entries for the Gillette performance rankings. We'll be giving away a Gillette starter pack a little bit later on in the show. Those entries are rolling in. And a reminder, of course, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. We're going to talk football next as Mark Lawrenson joins us. First, with 2 obviously live Premier League matches for you on Off the Ball and on the OTB Sports app yesterday afternoon. Man United won 3-1 at Villa Park, coming from behind. Everton obviously put a big dent in West Ham's Champions League hopes. We're going to bring you full reaction to those games with Brian Kerr and Vinny Perth from 9:30. Here's Vinny talking about the performance of Seamus Coleman.
I have to speak to you about Seamus Coleman. We waxed lyrically about the Irish captain during the commentary this afternoon, but it really was an immense performance. I'm just thinking back to some of the stuff that he was doing, and even in the dying stage of that match, the way he hassled and harried Jesse Lingard with the ball right over the halfway line into his own half to keep him away from the Everton goal. It was a brilliant performance by Seamus Coleman, and as you mentioned in the commentary as well, it'll give Stephen Kenny, the Irish manager, such a huge lift.
Yeah, I'll give him a huge lift to be watching that game. And there was 2 things really noticeable in it. One is he played as a wing back, so Ireland have played with a back three of late, but his performance as the wing back was brilliant. He went into midfield at times as well, central, and so from a tactical point of view, that would be really good for Stephen and his coaching staff to see the way Seamus played. But also his running power, his fitness levels were exceptional. Everton counter-attacked once, and it was brilliant play by Calvin Lewis and Richarlison. But he was the next in, and actually him and Lingard got a good block on him, but he almost scored late in the game, breaking into the box and the furthest player forward. So his fitness levels are really exceptional high. Sometimes we look at Seamus, I think, with rose-tinted or green-tinted glasses, and everything he does is brilliant. But today, everything he did do was brilliant, and his performance is a real shot in the arm for the international manager. And remember, Ancelotti is an Italian coach mindset. He won't look at Coleman's age and think he's Asian. He won't be afraid to play a 35, 36-year-old player, a defender. No problems with that. He's done it before. He's compared him to Sergio Ramos already. So he's not going anywhere. He will be a Premiership star for everything for a bit of a future ahead of him. So that's good. That's good for Seamus.
And like most Italians, he's a teetotaler as well. So perhaps there's a lesson in that for any aspiring footballers who might be watching Seamus Coleman these days.
Yeah, I think it'd be... Seamus Coleman could be our first name on the team sheet when he's 42, 43. He could be Tom Brady-esque here. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, he was asked after the game as well yesterday, Ancelotti, about who would he pick as his man of the match. Would it be Alan or Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who cheekily claimed it in his post-match interview, and he was like, my man of the match, Seamus Coleman. Loves him. Yeah, he did say he's got a contract for life. They just have to actually give him the contract. So it'll be interesting to see if they put their money where their mouth is. It's 8:45 this morning. Mark Lawrenson, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, I'm good, thank you.
Really interesting weekend of football. On the face of it, at the start of the weekend, the fixture list wasn't great. And then all of a sudden, loads of little different nuggets emerge. Let's start with West Ham, actually, because they've been so close and the form has been so good, even when the injuries happened. And then Antonio comes back from injury and scores twice before the weekend. And you're like, wow, they're actually going to do it. And then Everton roll in, whose form has been flaky, except away from home, and do them. That must be devastating for Moyes at this stage.
Yeah, I speak to him on a regular basis. I don't think he's necessarily devastated, but he was always worried about this game because they won the original fixture, didn't they, at Goodison when he took West Ham back there. And he said it's a real tricky one. And he said everyone keeps saying to me, oh, you know, you beat Everton and the rest of your fixtures look relatively easy, but it's not the way that the Premier League is. And Everton away from home are a completely different animal to them till they are at home. And just I was listening obviously to the bit about Seamus Coleman. If you remember, he played as well at Liverpool in the derby in that particular position as he did yesterday. So massive credit to him. I think the thing with David Moyes, he knows he's up against it to finish fourth. But he'll be Europa League, which for West Ham, obviously, if he said at the start of the season, sat down with the two owners and he said, by the way, we'll get definitely Europa League, they'd have snapped your hand off, I think.
It's going to be strange to have a situation when fans come back and the support group is actually fully behind the club, because it felt like West Ham was just constantly in the cycle of an adversary crowd almost every single week, whereas they're going to come back and David Moyes is going to be a god to these people.
Well, listen, have you been to the Olympic Stadium when West Ham are playing?
No.
Honestly, it's like being in a library. It was obviously built for the Olympics, and you know you're miles away from the pitch. The noise just dissipates into the air, even if you've got 50-odd thousand there, which you have on regular occasions, and it's soulless. And it's not the easiest pitch. The easiest pitch and easiest stadium to play in. So, listen, he's done a fabulous job. He's always one of those Moyes. If you give him enough time, he gets your team extremely well organised, makes you, as a team, very, very difficult to beat. And then he dropped the odd nugget in there in terms of transfer. I mean, I've never known anybody in terms of bringing players in, the number of times he'll go and see them. His assistant will go and see them. He'll send the world and his wife to go and see them. And, I mean, we joke with him all the time because we say his favourite three words are, I'm not sure. And he's very much like that with players. But, you know, he's done a fabulous job there. And you just wonder, don't you, that if they'd let him stay at Manchester United, I know it's completely different, but if they'd let him stay, it might have been a different story. But, hey, he's at West Ham now.
Do you think the Champions League is gone? I mean, we've seen, that's the other story of the weekend, is that Leicester look like they're starting to tie up just a little bit.
I just think West Ham will fall short. I mean, Lingard cannot continue the form that he's had. He's been absolutely brilliant. You can argue as good for West Ham as maybe Fernandes has been for Manchester United. Such a massive influence, scoring wonder goals, and if he's not scoring, he's creating. I just think it feels a little bit like they might have run the race West Ham. They've started to look a little bit leggy as well. I think they might just miss out. But, Europa League's fine for them, isn't it?
And so at this stage, right, so just for people who might not have the table in front of them, Leicester have 63 points. West Ham have 58 points, and they've played the same number of games on 35, so they've got 3 games left. Liverpool have 4 games left on 57 points, which if they were to win that game in hand, which as we know is actually the Manchester United game really, would put them up to 60 and 3 points behind Leicester. You'd favour Leicester at this stage, but Leicester's performance against Newcastle was so bad that actually...
And the fixture list, Manchester United, Chelsea, Spurs is Leicester's conclusion.
Yeah, but then again, when you're playing those teams, you don't know what their situations are. I mean, Manchester United are virtually guaranteed Champions League. So with the number of fixtures they've got as well, be interesting to see what team that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer picks to play against Leicester. You just never know. And when Leicester play Chelsea, if Leicester virtually Chelsea virtually guaranteed as well to be in the Champions League. Will they change their team because of the Champions League final? So it's really about all on the day. Leicester throw results in like this on occasions. Just talking about West Ham, I remember, I think, relatively start of the season where West Ham went to Leicester. Did they not win 3-0? And we're kind of thinking, oh. But I think that's Leicester. They just occasionally, they have a very, very poor performance. It just seems to be everybody. But I still think they've got the tools to actually make it by the last game.
Liverpool also have to hold up their end of the bargain, though, if Leicester do crumble a little bit. Is there enough from what you've seen on Saturday night to suggest that this Liverpool team are going to get 12 points from a possible 12?
No. I'd love to say, yeah. I think Klopp gambled a little bit, obviously, at the weekend in terms of the 2 central defenders, and he's obviously decided. I think everyone's been saying to him, look, you just got to leave Fabinho in midfield. He's a completely different player. With the absence of Henderson, he makes such a difference. So I just think they look vulnerable. They look vulnerable on the counter-attack. Southampton played quite well for long periods of that game, even when they were 1-0 down, and they did create opportunities. And you might argue on the day that Alisson was one of the best players that Liverpool had. So that worries me. And I think they still look a little bit leggy. They were better as well at the weekend because they hadn't played for a week with the game against Manchester United being postponed, etc. But no, I'm still not convinced. The fact that they look vulnerable, and I think they know that they're vulnerable, that's the problem. The players take to the pitch and it's almost like fingers crossed, hopefully we don't concede today. And I think, the 2 previous games against Newcastle and Leeds, that's where Liverpool are at the moment. And they need a rest, basically. All those players need a rest, especially with the way that Klopp demands that they play the football. And it's touch and go for me whether they actually get in. I'm totally not convinced at all.
Mark, we were having this conversation a little bit earlier on. After his victory at Quail Hollow, Rory McIlroy came off and said, I really miss the fans. The fans made a big difference. I really feed off the energy of the crowd. We've been having this conversation about Liverpool for such a long period of time now during lockdown that it seems like it's nonsensical that all the teams should be affected equally. But when Rory McIlroy comes off and says, actually, I really needed that, and, maybe it's completely in his head and it's not real, but he believes it to be real, and so therefore his perception is reality. Is there a possibility that Liverpool are a completely different team next year with the energy of the Anfield crowd?
I don't think it's a possibility. I think it's a probability. And fantastic for Rory McIlroy, because obviously it's over 500 days since he last won or something. But wow, wouldn't you like to be able to play golf like him and be so kind of supple and stuff the way that he plays? So good luck to him. But I read an article in one of the weekend papers, and I think it was who was it? The guy who's a lad at West Ham who's been there for years, midfield player, captain.
Mark Noble.
Say again?
Mark Noble.
Sorry, Mark Noble. Yeah. I was thinking Proctor. God knows where that came from. and he was interviewed by Jamie Redknapp, and they were talking about different things about football, and obviously, and the crowds came up, and Mark Noble just said, he said, nobody realises when you go to Anfield more than anywhere else when you're the opposition. So it feels like the cop sucked the ball in, and they certainly kind of suck you in as a player. And he said they, as a home crowd, have the biggest influence on any other team and place that he's ever played against in it and in. So it does make a difference. It makes a massive difference. And there's the thing about Liverpool as well, and the punters have always been the same for a long time. If you give absolutely everything for them, they can forgive you having on occasion a bad day or missing chances, etc. But there's always that thing when all of a sudden Liverpool needs something as a team, and more often than not they get it from the crowd, and it does really make a difference. Look, all the results that we've seen, forget about Liverpool's results, look at everybody's results generally, apart from the odd one like City, etc. And it's just made a massive difference, no crowds.
There was obviously the highlights of Liverpool against Barcelona during the rounds last week, because it was 2 years to the day since the comeback. And I'm not sure, did we not quite appreciate it at the time, but Jordi Alba's face after Origi scores early on just illustrates how much this crumble was about to happen. And that has to come not only from the early goal, but the incredible volume that I suspect was inside Anfield that night. It's not just the early sucker punch, it's just, as you say, that crowd either sucking the ball in or absolutely psyching you out if you're an opponent in that stadium.
Yeah, and you know when you play that you've got to be 101% on those particular nights, because it's demanded of you. And I think it's one of the great things I think about the manager, which is, he knew straight away when he got the job there exactly what the situation was. That you were demanded that you give up, as I said, absolutely everything every time you play. But certainly on nights like that, and as daft as this sounds, the darkness has got something to do with it as well. It's always, even in my time there, in my 7, 8 years, always, that game at night, the atmosphere was probably another 10, 15, maybe 20%. It's just different in the day, but that night thing is amazing. And you feel this surge of passion, and you realise that, this is do or die. And that's why you've got so many fabulous nights. And I know supporters of other clubs go, they always go on about this, and, well, what about Old Trafford for this, and City or whatever, all those other places. I'm telling you, it's just completely different. And even if I I'd played there for other teams against Liverpool before I went there, and it's palpable. It really seriously is. You just feel it all the time. And you know what? As an opposition player, as soon as you make a mistake, you're thinking, crikey, we're in trouble here. And that night against, I was working for the television as well that night. That was just, the Barcelona night for me was the best ever.
That's why we brought it up on the back of Rory. Next season is going to be very interesting, because we'll have, I think, 4 genuine contenders. City are going to be there. Chelsea are definitely going to be there. The turnaround on Tuchel is spectacular. The age profile of that team is brilliant. You're going to have Manchester United and you're going to have Liverpool. But the Manchester United question, that came up a little bit earlier on in the show as well. I'm not sure I understand what the truth is about United. That it's brilliant that they keep having these second half comebacks, and it's brilliant that they show the resilience to go behind in games and win those matches, and they've got more points from losing positions, blah, blah, blah. But they keep going behind in games, and that's not sustainable over a 2-3 year period where you keep going behind in games, particularly against the better sides.
Yeah, well, you're not going to win the league that way. But I think it shows that the best part of Manchester United's team is from midfield going forward, and they've got so many talented players in both departments. And, even though defensively they have improved, I'm still not convinced about Lindelof. I think the jury's out a little bit on the goalkeeper as well yet, because he's not come under real immense pressure. So, if they could get another centre-back to play alongside the captain, that would make a massive difference. Because Harry Maguire is while he's lacking a little bit of pace, it would not be an issue if he's got somebody alongside him who's extremely rapid. So I think they probably need 3 players, Manchester United. We all sit here and know they need this, they need that. I think they probably need 3 players, and I think, then they've got a really, really good chance, because, like the Greenwoods and your Rashford and all these lads, you forget how young they are, and they're only going to get better and better. And the fella Fernandez has just been sensational for them. And by the way, if there's one person you want to keep, it's Cavani, because his movement, well, we saw it yesterday when he came on, you just knew, as soon as that ball came on, you just kind of knew that he'd be the first to it. And all he needed was a little touch, and that's all he gave it. And I think it's imperative that they keep him. I don't know why he wants to go home, because he could have another year in front of like 70,000 at Old Trafford, and he will become a legend.
So they need a centre-back, a defensive central midfielder, and do they need a new goalkeeper, or is Henderson good enough if they sell De Gea?
Well, I don't know why you would sell De Gea. I'm not sure, unless he obviously completely just wants out. And I know he's on massive money, but your goalkeeper is massive. And Henderson did extremely well at Sheffield United, as we know, and he's done okay at Manchester United. But all of a sudden, I think when he realised ultimately that he's the number one, that's when the pressure starts. And the other thing with Manchester United, generally, we would imagine next year, in most games, they'll be in control. You probably won't have much to do. And I think that's therein lies the big problem for goalkeepers. The best goalkeepers in the world aren't the ones who make all the saves all the time in the games. They are the ones at the top clubs who maybe for 10, 15 minutes don't touch the ball, but occasionally, the opposition get an opportunity and the goalkeeper has to make a top-class save. So it's not just about ability, it's massively about concentration, all those kind of things. So I just think with Henderson, so far so good, but to actually have a fabulous chance of winning the league, it remains to be seen. Look at the Chelsea goalkeeper. He's done fab. And when he first came, we all kind of thought, he's not too good with his feet. He's not good with it. He's done fabulous. And I know, obviously, in front of them, they've been very, very good, whether it's 3 or 5 or whatever it is. But nobody talks about him anymore because they just think he's a top-class goalkeeper.
I know you're making the point that they need additions defensively, and that's where they need to improve. At the same time, I think at the end of last season, when we were making a case for United as potential title challengers this season, we were talking about Mason Greenwood as one player who was going to kick on, and it obviously hasn't happened for him for a number of reasons until the last couple of months, and he scored 5 goals in 5 games now, I think it is, in the Premier League anyway, and then the Europa League on top of that. This guy obviously, I mean, is just a level above every other kid that United seem to have had over the last 5-10 years, it seems. He's like matching Wayne Rooney's records now at this point. He is one of the factors why United fans, even though it's not a defensive acquisition or a defensive addition for next season, has to give a lot of United fans a lot of hope.
Oh, I mean, is he left-footed or right-footed? That's the first thing, which is most unusual as we've seen. I mean, it's one of the strangest things in modern day football is why the majority of the players aren't 2-footed. It is amazing, but this kid certainly is. He knows where the goal is, which is fabulous. He can play through the middle. He can play in a 3 on the right, play in a 3 on the left. I think he gets the thing that as you're a Manchester United player, you've also got to be able to defend, which for players like him and Rashford is more about being in position rather than anything else. And it would appear that he seems to be quite a decent lad, very, very modest, which obviously you love because if it goes to the head a little bit, that's a worrying thing. But he's just going to be a top player. And the Rashford fella, we haven't even seen the best of him yet. Look, yesterday he was just so strong and so quick. And he's suddenly got a bit of devil in him as well, which I love. That I had a bit. I think it was one of the Villa back 4 players yesterday, and a bit of pushing and shoving, and I think he had a kick at him as well, Rashford, which thankfully the referee didn't see. But as a coach, you're thinking, good on you, which is, you don't want to be beaten here, and for young players coming into the game, there's an awful lot to learn. It's like you come in, you do well, and then you get rested a little bit, and then you come back in and you maybe don't do quite as well. And I've always said as well with young players that, it's quite good sometimes just to sit in the stand and watch your team play, and also maybe watch the person who plays on your position and just see what he does. Because like anything in life, you can always improve.
Big Sam's great record, Mark. We might finish up on this. Has gone. It has disappeared. The man who never got relegated has all of a sudden got relegated. There was early signs maybe that performance against Liverpool around Christmas time where we thought that this might actually happen for West Brom, that he might have turned it around, but maybe he just didn't have the players this season. Does he get another gig like this again to try and save a team from relegation danger in the near future?
Will he? Well, I think he'll stay with West Brom, and quite honestly, he'll probably bring them back up. And I think that's probably going to be his last job. I know when the phone rings and someone says, "No, we need you, Sam." Obviously, he dons his Superman gear on and off he goes. But I just think that West Brom will be daft to let him go. He's got massive experience. He knows the Championship. He knows players, and he knows how to get out the Championship. And it won't be pretty, but it will be very, very effective. And I think then if he does that and gets them back in the Premier League after that year in the Premier League, whatever happens, I think he'll probably call it a day, to be honest with you. And I think his missus will be on at him as well, saying, "Have you not had enough of this stupid game already?"
And underappreciated part of the decision-making process there.
Yeah. He's just got, he's just got massive experience. He knows how to deal with agents, which sounds a bit daft, but that's part and parcel of it. He can pick the phone up to most people in regards of asking about players. And one thing about him, and everybody's got this opinion of Sam Allardyce from maybe not knowing him, but you ask any players who've ever played for him, and they absolutely love him, because just said he's a real player's man. Yes, he's tough, and yes, he'll give it to you in dressing rooms, etc. But it's always very, very fair. Look, he's got a fabulous record. I don't think anybody really thought they would keep West Brom, because they were never ever good enough in terms of the personnel, and that's obviously been shown out from when he's been there, even though he really has improved them. But no, he'll be back. He'll be back as long as he doesn't beat Preston home and away next season. I'm not bothered.
Mark, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers for joining us this morning.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Mark Lawrenson, give me some thoughts on the weekend's football there. You can get in touch with us. 0879 180 180 is the number. We were going to do contenders for player of the season with Mark. We'll get them a little bit later on. Is it a long list, or is it a short list at this point?
Well, your boy Jack Grealish and his injury really scuppered his claim to the title. I think Harry Kane will be looking around and seeing him in the rearview mirror by some distance. Ruben Dias will be another contender. We had a conversation last week about Ederson potentially being in the mix, but I think that was quickly rubbished. So Ruben Dias, Harry Kane, Bruno Fernandes has obviously been absolutely sensational, and they would be your three, I would say. De Bruyne as well, obviously he had a bit of his injury troubles after Christmas, maybe.
Came back from them relatively well, very well.
Yeah, and I guess he's being judged on last season's base on a numbers level. I'm not sure how he's doing in comparison to that, but I suspect it's not quite at that level of output, even though he's been just as effective. So maybe that's a little bit unfair to tar him with that. I do think, though, that Harry Kane is probably the front runner.
Do you think so? Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I would have said that Bruno was ahead of him, but maybe not. Okay, well, give us your views. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. You can get this, of course, on the OTB Sports app. It's OTB Gold at 1 o'clock. Dr. Harry Edwards in conversation about O.J. Simpson. He was one of the contributors to that amazing documentary series about O.J. State of the Union, Keith Wood's rugby programme at 3. The classic documentary about Ken Doherty's world title win in 1997. OTB Gold is the book review at Centaur, an interview with Declan Murphy, the author of his own life story, at 6. And then at 7 tonight, the show is live with Joe Malloy. We'll bring you more of the weekend reaction with Brian Kerr and Vinny Perth from 9:30 this morning. But up next, we've got rugby with Alan Quinlan.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
There was one player, and me and him didn't get on, to be honest. I won't name him. So essentially, it ended up being like a pretty big fight in the show. But it's one of them ones where there was no one around to break it up. So I was kind of going, how long is this going to go on for, you know? And it was like, I don't really want to be doing this. I wish someone would come in now and just break this up. But obviously 2 lads in the shower, you know, all greased up, rolling round it. It probably wasn't a pretty sight.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
At Online Tradesmen, we've never been busier. And if you're a trade professional, there's never been a better time to join us. Access over €17 million worth of jobs nationwide every month, along with e-learning and other supports. Need a website for your business? It's included in your membership. And on average, Online Tradesmen members get up to 10 times their fee back in new sales, marketing tools and savings. Apply today at onlinetradesmen.ie. Online Tradesmen, the home of qualified trade professionals.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
We'll be giving away our Gillette starter pack in the next 15 minutes or so. Your last opportunity to enter is if you get into the comment section on YouTube or send us a WhatsApp 0879 180 180 and we'll be announcing a winner in just a couple of minutes' time. But Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. How are you?
Yeah, good. It's hard to know how important these games are in terms of the lessons that we're learning at the moment from the Rainbow Cup, because like no one ever grew up dreaming of winning a Rainbow Cup, and yet these are full-blown matches with players playing for form ahead of lines, all that kind of stuff. So what are you taking away from these games?
It's difficult, Ger. I think I suppose round one was I was a little bit more excited and pleased with the games. I think we saw some really good performances, some good rugby. I just thought round two was a little bit, didn't get as much excited about it, but you know, they still are inter-pro games. I think there's, as you said, there's a lot to play for players. The line squad is picked. Some now just have to get true performances. Others have a point to prove. There's no Irish tour this summer. So I think that added a little bit of spice to the Rainbow Cup, that we would have seen a little bit more intensity and desire from guys to try and make a summer tour and grab some attention. But look, they're all professionals. They've got to try and perform and take something. There's an opportunity to take something out of the season, whether you win the Rainbow Cup or not. But they've got to keep going and keep performing. Ulster were very disappointing on Friday night. I think backed up a really bad second half against Leicester with a really poor performance in Thomond Park, and Leinster reacted then to what happened in La Rochelle the week before after going 16 down. So I suppose if you're a player, the juices mightn't be flowing as much as you know, a Pro 14 knockout game or a big Pro 14 game or a European game, but still at the same time there's a lot to play for the individuals.
And from a coaching perspective, is there stuff that you think that any of the 4 coaching setups in Ireland are going to be learning about their players or patterns of play or any of that kind of stuff, or do they end up just trying to focus on individual performance markers at this point of the season too?
No, they've got to take something out of it themselves, and for Munster, it's, I think, just trying to expand a little bit their attacking game. I thought defensively they were very strong and aggressive, and they continued on with that aggressive approach that they and dominance that they had against Leinster a couple of weeks ago, albeit it was a weaker Leinster team. I think the concern for Ulster was how physical Munster were and how they just weren't able to cope or get over the gain line. And, you know, it was always going to be difficult for Ulster going down to Thomond Park. And we spoke about the psychological effects. I think there's a lot to be gained here in the next couple of weeks for teams, particularly in these inter-pro games. You know, Connacht obviously have to go to Thomond Park on Friday, and Leinster host Ulster. So, you know, there's a sense of a bit of desperation from Connacht and Ulster now with their performances. But of course the coaches can build on stuff. You can work on things. You can integrate some players. You can have a little bit more of a look. There's less pressure, if you like. And we've probably seen that in the first couple of rounds where teams have the shackles off a little bit. You can still see, you know, obviously the blueprint or the pattern or the type game that some teams play, but we've seen a little bit more a looser approach to the Rainbow Cup, and there's less pressure. I think it's not the be all and end all, but still there's an opportunity, and I'd be very surprised if Leinster didn't go for every game now and try and win the Rainbow Cup. Wouldn't have been high on their priority list, but now I think that performance after 15 minutes against Connacht showed that they're still a very good side, and that the reaction was very, very positive for them. But everyone has their own reasons and desire to try and win these matches. Munster are trying to get a trophy. They're in a good position now to win the rest of their games, but I just have a feeling now themselves and Benetton are the only two teams who've won the first two games. And it's a straight 12 teams, and the top two will go into a final. We still don't know what the fixtures are for 4, 5 and 6. 4 and 5. I think the teams know themselves who they're playing the next couple of weeks. But there's a fair bit to be gained, and I think you can try things a little bit different, and you can look at the individual reactions. If I was a coach of any of the teams, I'd be looking at players who drop their standards a little bit, or players in the opposite who really show a desire and a want to improve and get better, and you can build stuff on the back of that for next season.
I think it is impossible to separate some of the big performers at the weekend from all the lines chat over the course of the last week. And while a lot of that chat has focused on people who didn't make it, people who had injury worries, people who weren't durable enough to go on the tour, we've maybe overlooked some of the people who did make it a bit. And Conor Murray is one player, Alan, who's really timed this perfectly in terms of fitness, in terms of form, and it is in really good shape going to South Africa.
Yeah, he was very good the other night, I think, and it's amazing what even a selection like that can do. If there is any chink in the confidence, I think, Conor's, the last 18 months or 2 years has been up and down. He's had critics. He's produced big performances. He's produced poor performances. And that's the nature of the beast. But I think it's hard to judge anyone on these games, because I think Ulster were very poor the other night. I was really disappointed with them. I thought they'd... Munster were good now, in fairness, don't get me wrong. They were very, very strong and dominant and aggressive, and Johan van Graan got a continuation of the frustration, the anger going back to the Pro 14 final and losing against Toulouse, which was a tough couple of weeks for him. And they're the ones showing that they want to improve their performances and build on it and take something out of this. And yeah, Conor Murray, on the back of his forwards, and I played very well in front of him. He performed very, very well, was dangerous throughout, making little snipes, breaks, and that's what you want to see from top players, in these games that you perceive to be not the most important. I think they're the little things that coaches will watch, how players perform, and he showed again the other night that there is that desire, that passion, that fire is still there, and he produced a very good performance.
I guess for anybody who is on the Lions plane as it stands at the moment, these games are kind of important, but not really. All you need to do is to be fit, so that when you get to the tour, you get the opportunity to show the selectors that your form is good. Or how good does your form need to be over the next couple of weeks before that Japan game, before they actually leave?
I think in an ideal world, you've got to, as a player, you can't think. Look, at the back of their mind, I think they'll be all hoping and praying that nobody picks up a knock or a bang in the next couple of weeks, because even a small knock, I think, could put someone's tour in jeopardy, given that the tour is condensed a little bit. But you can't think about that. You can't think about injury. You've got to try and just go out and play and perform, and build on your own individual match practice, fitness level, and confidence. If you can keep those performances going, I think obviously when I got selected in 2009, the first match afterwards was the Scarlets, and I didn't in any way think that, you know, I've got to mind myself now in the next couple of weeks. You can't do that. When we watch some of these games, we sometimes think players just have to get through it. But I think from a player's point of view, you've just got to go out and do what you've been doing and not really focus on that. In that game, obviously, Tomás O'Leary got an horrendous injury, which was heartbreaking, and in that game. And it's a tricky one. I think, you know, deep down, players will be just praying and hoping that they can get through the next couple of weeks. And if that's on the back of good performances and good form, and I think that the first couple of games, I think the Lions' first test will be selected on the back of the games that they play as a group, the Japan game and the other games that they play before that first test. So I don't think any of the coaches, obviously if someone is alarmingly bad and missing tackles or just really, really underperforming, it would concern Warren Gatland. But I think any of the players they don't have to do anything spectacular. They just got to make sure that they're fit and getting around the field and look like they want to perform and that they're getting involved all the time, because the worst thing that can happen is players standing back.
No one's actually playing themselves into the test team by the club form between now and...
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I think there's certain guys that if they finish well in the Premiership in England and they put in top class performances, or if, you know, certain guys get into a Rainbow Cup final or whatever like that, you know, of course it would grab the attention of the selectors and Warren Gatland. But I think overall players just have got to look good in the next couple of weeks, not look bad, if that makes sense. Because if you're looking bad and you're trudging around the fields and looking like you are minding yourself, that would probably frustrate a coach or catch Warren Gatland's eye. It's just about keeping the fitness levels up, and obviously you've got to hope and pray that you don't pick up injuries, but you try and put that to the back of your mind, because that's risky if you stand off, and if you're minding yourself a little bit, that's something that wouldn't be advisable. I don't think anybody will do that. I was hoping Jack Conan would play the full game the other night. I wanted to just see him be a dominant figure, be someone who kind of put his chest out and said, yeah, I got picked. Little bit of a surprise selection, but here's my quality. This is what I can do. And it was a shame, but you saw the effort levels of Ringrose and, you know, the frustration probably that he would have. But I think there's definitely going to be injuries. There's definitely going to be, it's always happened in Lions tours that there's going to be some injuries, and players have to be ready and willing to kind of jump at that chance if they get the opportunity. I think the guys who are on the periphery have to keep playing well, show a good attitude. You saw Kyle Sinclair for Bristol at the weekend getting the Man of the Match award, and I'm not sure if you saw the interview afterwards. He showed the emotion and what it meant to him. And so, you know, I would be amazed if Warren Gatland didn't see that and go, that's exactly what I want. That's what I want from the players who didn't get picked and didn't get selected. If somebody gets injured, that they're super fit, ready to go, they've minded themselves in this period of time. Be very easy to kind of switch off now at the end of the season and, you know, get through the last couple of games and let yourself go a bit, not do the extra fitness sessions, the extra skill sessions, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, there will be, unfortunately, for some players, they may not make the plane because they may pick up injuries and knocks.
Who was the most unfortunate to miss out, Alan, across all countries? Because I know this is the first time we've had you on since the Lions announcement.
I think Johnny Sexton is. James Ryan hasn't played. You know, if you go back a couple of weeks, even the start of the Six Nations, James Ryan's name was nailed on. You know, there was talks at different periods over the last 2 years about potential captaincy and the acceleration that and the improvement that he had shown. It's a really tough blow for him because he hasn't become a bad player. He's just unfortunate with the concussion he got. Maybe a little dip in form as well. I remember interviewing him 2 years ago at the end of near the end of the 2018 season, and like it was sensational. 20-something games, all wins, Grand Slam, about to play in a European final, Pro 14 final. It was sensational what was happening there, and he's played a lot of rugby since then. And this year, obviously, with the pandemic and a lot of chopping and changing, and then that injury he got, it just didn't do him any favours, I think. And I think it's unfair for people to judge Leinster on the La Rochelle game and their lines contingent, the players who missed out. It's a tough one. It's a harsh one. But I think Warren Gatland just needed to see, they needed to see Sexton back out in the field in the last couple of weeks, Jonathan Sexton, and probably a more dominant performance from James Ryan. So I feel sorry for them. Gary Ringrose as well. On another day, couple of good games for Leinster. All three would have been on that plane. So from an Irish perspective, I think that's unfortunate. I think someone like Billy Vunipola, Johnny May. I think Johnny May is a really kind of tough one as well, because I've looked at him the last couple of years and thought this guy's the best winger in the world. And you know, so they're unfortunate with their timing. It is about timing. I think Alan Wynne-Jones said that the other day. You know, England had a really poor Six Nations and for various different reasons, and that cost, even though they still have 11 players on the plane, that cost them. But I think, you know, it's hugely disappointing from an Irish point of view that those three didn't make it, and a Leinster point of view, and for the players themselves personally, because on another day they could be on that plane.
Is there an impact on how long Sexton plays? Like, does this make him more determined to last through to the next World Cup, or what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Someone said that to me the other day, that will this kind of dent the desire and the want and the his ability to kind of keep going? I don't think so, because I think it may have a benefit. You know, he'll have a summer off, which he wouldn't have wanted. He's got to recover, actually, obviously, from those head knocks that he's had, and they are concerning for sure. I'm you know, people are trying to figure out why is he getting so many? Why did he get 3 in recent times? I don't know. It's not. Some of them are very unlucky. You look at the Welsh one; it's a knee when he's carrying the ball. He had the ball. It's just frustrating, and it's bad luck, and it's timing for him. So, you know, he has another year. He signed a new contract, so I would be very surprised if you see any slacking off from Johnny Sexton. And he said it himself, it's a year by year bit thing now. This will hurt him a lot. You know, this will hurt a lot that he hasn't got on this tour, because it would have been a big goal of his to get on the tour. And we're not really sure where the World Cup situation is now, whether he will continue on. You know, that conversation will start next December, whether he signs another contract or an extension, or January maybe after post-Christmas. So it depends on what the player wants himself. You know, I know myself, when you get to that stage, it is year on year, and that's what he said recently. I think secretly and deep down, he would love to go to the next World Cup, but he probably won't be saying that as much anymore. I think he will just see where he's at. But it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he does, because that's the type. And that was one of the reasons why I would have taken him to South Africa. He's a big game player. I think Rog said that, used that quote. And that's what he is. He was a big loss for Leinster and La Rochelle. And it just depends what he's feeling himself. You know, at that stage, things can change in your own mind. It can reignite the spark in him again to go. If he gets a good break, spends time with the family this summer, not what he would have wanted. But let's see what happens next year with Johnny Sexton, where he's performing and how he recovers.
Yeah, and look, if he is going to somehow be a late call-up, you'd need to see him back playing, and I suppose that was the other big doubt. Like, he hasn't not been selected because he's not playing well. He hasn't been selected because he's not available for selection at the moment for Leinster and hasn't played for a while. Like, that was the concern that Gatland had. It wasn't that he wasn't a big game player, and you don't know that he's going to be fit by the time the stuff rolls around. You know, kind of, it's an interesting situation now for Leinster. Do you stand him down for the rest of the season and say, take that rest because ultimately this isn't important? Or do you get him back on the field on the off chance that one of the out-halves gets injured and he's like, well, I need to prove my fitness if that happens?
Well, when he's fit, getting back in the field, I think that's what he'll want. That's what I would want as a player. And, you know, of course, there is merit in what Warren Gatland is saying. You know, I think he needed to see Johnny Sexton in the last few weeks playing matches, playing a couple of games. He hasn't played that many games this season. And that's the issue. That's what went against him. I still would have, you know, tried to get him in there, but, you know, if it backfires, then people will be saying Warren Gatland was wrong to pick him. And, you know, there was a lot of, you know, Dan Bigger has played well this year. Finn Russell has played well. And Farrell obviously is the third fly half, or he may be the one that started fly half. But it's just unfortunate, you know, and it's the same for James Ryan. I don't think it was solely about performance. I think it was seeing these guys in the last couple of weeks would have possibly got them on the plane, which is frustrating and disappointing. But still, eight Irish guys on the tour is brilliant. Bundy Aki was the one probably blindsided everybody as well. But again, I understand why Gatland picked him and why he's going to be on that tour.
Yeah. All right, Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers. Alan Quinlan giving us some thoughts there on the line stuff. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Congratulations to Mark Cunningham, who is the winner of this week's Gillette starter pack. We've been taking your suggestions for the performance rankings, as always, here all morning long on OTB AM. And he called for Rory McIlroy to make the green. It's been a tough few weeks for Rory, and we can always appreciate someone bouncing back. We do love an out comeback story on this show. So that is that. Well done, Mark Cunningham. We'll be in touch with details of your Gillette starter pack as well. Tomorrow morning live from 7:30. Right now, more reaction to the weekend sport. You're going to hear from Vinny Perth shortly with some interesting stuff around the team selection for the Manchester City-Chelsea game, and in particular the fact that Chelsea won't have played against City with a false nine until the Champions League final. So stay tuned for that. First is Brian Kerr with Nathan Murphy after Manchester United's routine 3-1 victory at Villa Park.
Well, Brian, another comeback victory for Manchester United. 10th time this season they've come from behind to win. Sort of sums them up. Maybe a couple of questions at time defensively, but just scintillating up front.
Yeah, when they get going. First half was, I suppose, by their standards, it was tame enough. But with those players of real technical ability and quality on the pitch, there's always the potential for them to score goals. And I think you said it at half-time that they wouldn't be, just before half-time, they wouldn't be over-worried about being behind because they've done it so often. They've retrieved situations and they have the confidence in each other that they can produce those moments. And they certainly upped the tempo a bit in the second half. We didn't see much of McTominay, I felt, in the first half. Second half, he was more involved. And they, worked those positions to make the chances and get themselves back into the game. They were probably a bit fortunate, and the style of the penalty and the foul by Luiz was rather stupid, to say the least. But once they got into that position, kind of felt that they just take the momentum and go on and win the game, and that's how it went ultimately.
Is that down to character? Is that you look at that squad and say the heads don't drop when things aren't going their way? Actually, they stick together, that they come back so often?
I think there's characters involved in it, but when you combine quality with character, and I think there's good spirit about them. You can have a lot of character, but you mightn't have the players who are good enough. If you're playing against an opposition who get a lead against you, and they can sit in and defend. How often we see it in football, teams get a lead, probably surprising lead, against a team who are ranked above them, or they wouldn't feel that they're going to dominate possession. But then they get dig in and they feel comfortable in the match and they're dangerous on the counter-attack. Manchester United seem to be able to overcome that on a regular basis. And that's because they've got players with real ability, whether it's the pace of Rashford, the invention of Greenwood when he gets into good positions in the final third, the ability to get a shot away, as we saw today, the second goal, the cleverness of Fernandes and his technical ability, Pogba's all-round strength and creativity, I suppose, on the ball as well. And then you bring on a Cavani, who was a bit of a genius in his own right. He might be an ageing genius, but he still has it. So, you know, very few teams have that all-around ability in their attacking part of the pitch. So that's why they've the confidence in each other to put aside conceding a goal like they did today, which is a bad defensive goal. So many players made mistakes in the build-up to the goal. Ultimately, the last mistake was Lindelof's. He should have dealt with it. But they know they have this ability to create chances and score goals, and that proved to be the case as the game went on.
A month ago, Mason Greenwood had 1 Premier League goal to his name. He's now 5 in his last 5 Premier League matches. Still such a young player. I think he's now scored more goals as a teenager than any other Manchester United player, even more than Wayne Rooney had scored at the club. What do you make of his season so far?
Well, if you're right on those statistics, that's some achievement for a boy, given the quality of Manchester United players and the young players who've got into the team in the past. I think, if he's ahead of George Best, even that's something very remarkable. And Rooney, who got into the Everton team as a boy. What do I make of his season? I think he's had. As the season has gone on, it's got better for him. I think the earlier part of the season, it just wasn't quite happening for him. There was a lot of competition for the positions. He's the youngest of them in that group, when it's Martial, Anthony Martial, Rashford, and himself competing for those. Like, if you put Fernandes in, Fernandes has to play. So there was 3 for 2, and you were getting shuffled around a little bit. Martial playing the central position, Daniel James doing all right as well, and then they add Cavani to it. Now, Cavani didn't get going for a long time, but I suppose he didn't take his chances initially early in the season, so he becomes a bit of an add-on player and a midweek player in the cup competitions and the Europa League. But then he hits a bit of form, and you see his quality again and his ability to take chances, run with the ball. He's got stronger. I mean, we saw him in the match with Leeds a few weeks ago playing through the centre position, which is probably the position they hope that eventually he will be the centre forward. And he didn't do well that day. He was out-muscled, he was pushed off the ball a bit. And you see today he's back on the right wing, the right side of the attackers. I think that's his best position currently, similar to Rashford, until he gets his physical strength. Rashford has played through the middle. He doesn't look as good in there either as he does playing off the wide right or the wide left. And you see what Cavani brings to it. He brings a presence, he brings a nous to it, he brings that movement, experience, and that movement and the overall finishing as well. So Cavani is the best one for that position at the moment. But there's a place for Greenwood without a doubt in among that forward line, but maybe not always as the starter.
There's a lot of debate about where Manchester United are right now then, and the amount of progress they've made this season, and yourself and Damien Delaney have had a good go at it over the last few weeks as well. Could you play, and maybe this gets to the heart of that debate when you're trying to pick a United team, could you play Cavani through the middle, Rashford on the left, Greenwood on the right, Fernandes just behind, and Pogba alongside one of McTominay and Fred?
Well, that's the ongoing debate. And when we're talking about it with Damien, I mean, the initial debate took off because Damien said he didn't find them entertaining. And I think we had a bit of a debate about that. I mean, I find Manchester United always entertaining because it's interesting, and there's this type of debate about the defence and how good they are. Are they making progress at all? I think the problem they have is that neither McTominay or Fred are an out-and-out holding central midfield player that you can rely on to dictate the game from that position and protect the pair of centre-backs that are most frequently played, Lindelof and Maguire, if you want your full-backs to be attacking full-backs as well. And that's the core problem. When you play Pogba there, so you're playing, if you talk about it as in terms of 2 number 6s, I don't like talking about those numbers because people may not always understand exactly what the tactical nuance is of that. But if it's about Pogba playing beside McTominay or Fred, the problem is that that he's not disciplined in that position. He wanders off, he drifts to the left, he drifts forward, and doesn't always see the immediate urgency to get back into position there. And that's the problem for Manchester United. So what Solskjaer has taken to do to make the most effective, he plays McTominay and Fred. Matic used to be in the picture, but he's less so now. And then he gets Pogba on the left-hand side, and it's either Greenwood or Rashford plays, or some combination. Maybe Cavani doesn't play so much as we saw today. And I think that will remain the situation till the end of this season. Then it's all up in the air.
And is that the key to unlocking that next step for next season?
I would think so. And obviously the option, I mean, Bali is a good option in centre-back, but he's an unreliable option because of his fitness. I always think Lindelof does all right, but then you see today, little mistakes in this game today, the lack of, I suppose, been really, ruthless in his defending, and that little moment in the game today could have cost him dearly against better opposition. I mean, the reality of this season is they're going to finish second in the league and be about to win the Europa League against Villarreal, which won't be a pushover for them. But they're better. They've better quality, I would think, all around the pitch than Villarreal, who are a well-organised, disciplined team whose manager knows his way around, making it awkward for better opposition than the resources Villarreal have. And then it's about, can Manchester United push on? Will Paul Pogba stay? Will Cavani be still there? Who do they sign? What players are going to be available? Who's going to be the goalkeeper next season? De Gea, excellent the other night against Roma, will hardly want to stick around if he's a second choice for next season. Henderson looks like he's making a good fist of it at the moment, but it's again that one or two key signs. We've seen the difference that Diaz has made for Manchester City this season, and the difference Virgil van Dijk made for Liverpool 2 previous seasons. Is there someone out there that Manchester United could sign that's going to make that difference, and the player in the middle of the field that's going to make the difference that Fred and McTominay can't quite make? I think they're the key questions.
Do they need the two of them, or does one Diaz Van Dijk type figure mean that actually the defence doesn't need as much protection, so you could play a McTominay and Pogba?
I don't know the answer to that. I wouldn't claim to know the answer to that. But one player can make a sensational difference to a lot of teams. But then again, they do need to keep Cavani or get another player, because I as I've said previously, I don't think Martial, Rashford or Greenwood occupy that centre-forward position. I wouldn't even say efficiently enough. I'd say they just don't have the real presence and the wherewithal to do it in the way Manchester United need someone to do. But you could say the same thing about Chelsea or Manchester City, and they've managed to make up for that with the ability of the other players and the system they play. But in Manchester United's case, I think they need a main man centre forward to add to what they have, or else keep Edison Cavani.
Just a brief mention of Aston Villa. They shot themselves in the foot really at the start of the second half. You could tell from the reaction of his teammates how annoyed they were about what Douglas Luiz did with that foul on Paul Pogba. It was just senseless.
Yeah, given he's had a good steady season. He's played nearly every game. He's been reliable in there. The combination with him and McGinn have been very, very solid. Luiz just sits around, minds the back four. McGinn gives him a bit of help, but gets on, tries to support the front and create chances. But it was senseless stuff. I mean, he's waiting on the foul, the big man. He let him away with the first one in that Pogba was off balance after the initial tackle and got up and stayed on the ball. But then he went for another bite for it to try and win the ball, and he gave Pogba the opportunity to put his body across, feel the leg coming in, and goes to ground. And it tore Villa apart a bit but look, still only made it 1-1. But the flow of the game and the momentum of the game was now with Manchester United. And when they get into that mood, they're a very good side.
Were you as outraged as everybody else at Sergio Aguero's Panenka last night?
Well, I wasn't watching the match at the time. At the time, I was down watching St Patrick's Athletic and Shamrock Rovers, and I was probably a bit more outraged at the outcome of that game. Shamrock Rovers scored in the last minute, a great goal by Danny Mandrew, and it was a really good match. But when I saw it, I I was surprised, but I didn't have much sympathy for Aguero because I always think there's a bit of that which is a bit insulting and almost abusive on the goalkeepers who are in a very difficult position facing penalty kicks, and they are trying to read the mind of the taker. They're trying to remember the information they were given during the week in relation to the opposition getting the penalty and who might take it and where they might place it, and then the taker can embarrass them by doing the Panenka and waiting on the goalkeeper move and chip it through the middle. So I don't have the sympathy for Aguero that maybe some people would have.
I'm sure there were a few Brian Kerr players during the years that tried an old Panenka.
I can't actually remember. I don't think it'd come into fashion when I was managing. We got very few penalties with the Faroes. In fact, I don't think we got a penalty with the Faroe Islands in my number of games there. So no, I don't think I've ever had to have a go with a fella.
You'll probably tell me you were in Belgrade the night the first Panenka ever happened.
I wasn't there. I mean, I heard the lads talking earlier today before we got on the air about the night of the Alan McLaughlin goal. Alan, who sadly passed away this week at such a young age, and I was in Belfast that night for that match. I heard Donald Fannell talking about it with Joe and about how few people were there, but I was there that night and sitting on my hands, not saying too much. But no, I wasn't there the night of the Panenka. But it was a moment yesterday I'm sure Aguero will regret, because I think it's going to affect his chances getting on the pitch over the remainder of the season. Seriously, I think he's probably done himself out an appearance or two before the end of the season.
The race for the top four this week is going to be a huge week, and a lot of it may be influenced by what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer does, because United have Leicester on Tuesday night, Liverpool on Thursday night, West Ham are in action later today. Do you see either West Ham or Liverpool being able to break in between Chelsea and Leicester?
Well, I don't see them making the headway on Chelsea. I think Leicester have now become the team most vulnerable again, and obviously, the situation with the loss to Newcastle the other night and the injury to Johnny Evans, and also the fact that they've cup fight. I mean, which is the most important match for Leicester? It's an interesting debate now. What would be a great season for Leicester? Make the Champions League or win a cup? Like for Leicester to win the FA Cup. I mean, having won the Premier League a few years back was extraordinary. But this year, given the dominance of Manchester City and Chelsea, really, on the FA Cup in recent years, for Leicester to win it would be a marvellous achievement. But they as players, how would the manager feel if they won the Cup and don't make the top four this year and end up playing the Europa League again next season? He'd probably be disappointed. But at the end of the day, on his CV, if he wins the Cup, it would add to his reputation, which is really, really high at the moment, Brendan Rodgers. So the game on Tuesday night with Manchester United is a massive game for them. I would think they're under threat from Liverpool and the others, and West Ham. And what team Manchester United put out against Leicester on Tuesday night, it's going to be very interesting, and other clubs might be looking at that selection that Solskjaer goes with and say and might be prepared to have a bit of a whinge after if he doesn't put out a strong team and beat Leicester.
Just to finish up, you mentioned Alan McLaughlin. Alan worked with us for a lot of years and off the ball on co-commentary duty, and such a sad time this week at such a young age of 54. Talk to us about that night, his greatest night then, the night of that goal against Northern Ireland, because as you mentioned, they were talking on the radio how they reckon there was about 4 Irish supporters there. Obviously there was a few more of you who would slide in.
Well, I heard him saying the figure today that the FAI got 400 tickets, but I don't know if they gave them out. I actually got tickets that night. I got them from a great friend of mine, Jim Emery, who was the chief scout for Linfield, and he was a very good friend of mine. And I did Jim 1 or 2 favours over the years and recommending players to him that went from here, including the likes of Pat Fenlon. And not that you needed to have a great eye to spot that Pat Fenlon might be a good player for Linfield. But, I talked to Jim about the potential of players from here going and playing. Others did, Desi Gorman and Martin Bailey, and there was a couple more. But, and I met Jim before the game, remember the game well, the game with a friend of mine. it was an extraordinary night, and there was a lot of bitterness in the air, and you certainly wouldn't have been, shouting and roaring in your seat or letting your accent be heard, particularly mine. And it was a very, very, very tense, nasty occasion, you'd have to say, to a degree. There was great joy at the end of it. Alan McLaughlin coming on in that atmosphere, that a dreadful atmosphere it really was for a game of football. There was so much bitterness and sourness in the air. Going back probably to the previous game when we won 3-0 in Dublin, and the crowd were singing that there's only one team in Ireland, that sort of stuff. They felt the Northern Ireland football supporters felt very aggrieved about that, and Billy Bingham threw some petrol on the fire on the night. But anyway, Alan McLaughlin produced the goods with a great goal. Difficult situation, the ball broke to him, he took a touch and banged it into the net from inside the box. But I'm sure he and his family would not want to be remembered alone for that night. I think he'd want to be remembered for the good guy he was, the intelligent football player that he was. I think in this era he would have been much more of a regular at a higher level of football than he was in those days, because he played in a time when football was different. There was a lot more aggression in the game. There was lots less room for intelligent footballers who saw the space and were able to break into it around the penalty area, as he did that night, to stick the ball in the net. And I think he would want to be remembered for his dedication and loyalty to clubs like Swindon, for whom he played over 100 matches, and Portsmouth, for whom he played hundreds of matches, and the other clubs that he made a contribution to, and the people that he worked with in the media as well, who all speak of him very highly. I didn't deal with Alan much, but I heard him making contributions on our programmes over the year, and he was obviously a very intelligent assessor of football, and his coaching ability was highly valued in the clubs he worked with, Portsmouth too. And it seems like he was just a great all-round guy. And I spoke with Niall Quinn, who knew him very well, and Niall had spoken to him in the last couple of weeks. I read Tony Cascarino's touching piece, I'd say, in yesterday's English Times. I thought that was a lovely piece, and Dave McKechnie's piece in the Irish Times as well, who worked with him when he did a column for the Irish Times at one time. They were all pieces that kind of put the image out there of a totally well-rounded footballer, former footballer, who had a lot more strings to his bow, and who was highly admired by those that played with him, those that worked with him, those that managed or coached with him. And I think from our point of view, we were just supporters that saw Bloke play and admired him as a player, but he was much more than that.
Yeah, a very sad loss, and he'll be sadly missed. Brian, thanks as always.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan.
OK, Vinny, it finished West Ham 0, Everton 1. It was a really tremendous performance by Everton from a defensive point of view. They'd always try and get those goals in the break with Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison able to do that for them. And it did happen for them today. Calvert-Lewin with his 16th goal of the season. You'd have to say in the balance of play that it was a deserved victory for the Toffees.
Yeah, much the better team. Albeit, I think West Ham possession stats were over 60-odd%, so they really dominated the ball. But the big thing for me was Everton didn't allow them any quick counter-attack, quick play. They couldn't find the pockets where Lingard has been so much of a threat all season for West Ham. They couldn't find the spaces for the forward players. They done it one or two rare occasions. And to be fair, Ben Rama has missed a great chance, and Sheahan has hit it inside the post. But on the balance of play, Everton were really the dominant team. Every time they went forward, Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison were brilliant, real danger in the counter-attack. And it was a really strong performance by Everton, and I think tactically the 3-5-2 worked a treat, and it really caused West Ham problems and no answers to it, which was disappointing.
Was it a case of Ancelotti, the old Italian master, out-tacticking, shall we say, to use a Sam Allardyce term, his opponent David Moyes today?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was no space in the midfield areas. There was lots of crosses into the box by West Ham, but the back three of Everton dealt with everything really, really strongly and well. And I think that's. I think West Ham. I think Moyes has done an amazing job. Amazing job there. They're in a really strong position. But they've missed a chance this year. They didn't have a plan B. It didn't work for them. They are unlucky. They've had a couple of injuries. Declan Rice is a massive loss on that midfield, because once they switched the ball from one side to the other quickly, he did cause Everton some problems. But ultimately, Ancelotti won the battle, didn't allow any space for the likes of Lingard's, these players. Antonio got really frustrated, start playing out wide in different areas. And West Ham didn't have a plan B and didn't look like breaking them down enough.
Everton, I suppose their big problem this season has been their home form. It's been poor at Goodison Park. They've lost some games where you'd really expect them to win. Drawing against Tottenham a couple of weeks ago, they lost to Burnley, lost to Newcastle at home, and Callum Wilson tore them apart at the back. And I think that's frustrated Everton supporters. You would imagine, though, looking at the squad and the team that Ancelotti has there, and we know, or we knew when he took over, you need 2 or 3 transfer windows to really build a good squad there. You'd imagine with a couple of key signings this summertime that he could maybe have that team a little bit more sustainable, a little bit more consistent, and perhaps in and around that top 4. I know they're not too far off it, but really in that top 4 battle next season.
Yeah, listen, that level between sort of 4th and 10th is so competitive. Anyone can push the opposition out or further down the league. But I've listened to Ancelotti speak during the week about what the team is lacking is consistency and continuity. So they've had a couple of injuries that haven't helped them. People have come in and out, but the consistency. To lose to West Ham or to lose to Newcastle and Burnley, yeah, they play really well against Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs. So that tells you that the manager tactically is good enough to when he takes on the top teams. I think his players are letting them down and switching off and not consistent enough in the games against Newcastle and Burnley. Some would say he's got to get them up for them games, but the players have let themselves down at times and lacked the consistency, because there was a real chance for someone to get into the top 4 this year of a different type. And they've again, a bit like West Ham, I think they've missed, or potentially going to miss, the opportunity this year where it was a lot easier, because you'd imagine the likes of Liverpool will come back much stronger next year and force himself into the top 4. So it was an opportunity missed for Everton this year, and just consistency has cost them. But there's no doubt Ancelotti is building a real strong squad there. A lot of good, young, hungry players. And the front 2 are exception as well. Richarlison really works really hard for them, and he's not nice to look at, he's not nice to play against, but he gives them a real platform. And if you ever want to see 2 players playing up front today, have a look at their goal. He comes short, brings the centre half with him, ball down the side, and his space is there for Calvert-Lewin to run into, and it's a brilliant finish and it's a well worked goal.
Let's stick with Calvert-Lewin just for a moment, because he's having his best season, there's no doubt, for Everton. 16 goals he's hit so far, and we've still got a few more games to play. Listen, Harry Kane is the England captain. He's going to be the first choice if he's fully fit. But there is a question over his fitness going into Euro 2020. Do you think that Calvert-Lewin now has put himself in the box seat to be the main striker for England if Kane isn't fit? And could he even really compete with Kane for that starting striker berth?
Yeah, I don't think he can compete, but he's certainly the next in. And I think if England were chasing a game, he's definitely an option off the bench, because his running power down the sides of people. He's a big, big unit. I seen him walk out with Duncan Ferguson. I was shocked, because I've never noticed how tall he is. Because he's so trim and athletic, you don't realise that he's over 6'2". So he's a big threat in the air. He also defends set pieces quite well, which coaches take heed in. And particularly England play so much attention to the set pieces. So both ends, he's good in the air, attacks ball well. I think that's the sign of a top-class manager. If you make players better, Ancelotti has made him a better player, and so many other players. He's made him a better player. I think he's a year ago, it was probably touch and go whether he went in the European Championships. Now he's a shoe-in if anything happens to Harry Kane. And England have often been unlucky. A lot of the stars miss out, or they have, the amount of metatarsals that seem to go on England's big players just before the tournament. So he's someone that they'll have in mind. He's someone they'll be watching. I've seen England assistant manager there today. So he's definitely on the radar. And if the opportunity comes, I think he's good and big enough and strong enough as a person to take that chance if he does get the opportunity in the summer.
OTB AM. With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved